across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, hello there, and I just want to start off with an apology. I'm sorry if you haven't seen me for a while, if you felt abandoned, if you're a regular listener when I pop up on the airwaves and you're thinking, what's happened to her? Where's she gone? Does she not like us anymore? Well, dear listener, dear viewer, I have been a sickly little Alex. It's true. I had some sort of, I'm going to call it inauguritis, because I went to the inauguration, which seems like a million years ago now, back in the days where I was healthy. Went over to America to the inauguration. It was a great time. I mean, so many events, parties, do's. You're going from, you know, a lunchtime reception to an evening function to a late night party. All the roads shut off. Every hotel, every restaurant, everything fully booked. This mad week-long celebration for the coronation of the new president. And I was all for it because, hey, Donald Trump, isn't he doing a good job already? And I had a great time. Minus 11 degrees outside, though. It was like walking into a walk-in freezer. Anyway, I get back from inauguration, and that, I don't know, that was the last thing I remember. The last 2 weeks, I've basically been ill in bed, really poorly, as have most other people I know who are also in America. And it's left me with this shocking vertigo. Like, really bad. I phoned Dr. Enne, you know, good old Dr. Enne Hunderkamp, regular here on Talk. I phoned her yesterday because I thought to myself, oh, well, she's my GP, my bestie, she's going to tell me what to do. And she's like, I'm on my sofa. I've got it as well. So if you see me do this, inhale like I'm running out of poop, like I've got no breath, well, that's because I'm not well. If you see me clinging on to the desk with my hands trying to steady myself, it's because I feel like I've just gotten off the waltzers. And if I start talking utter gibberish, then bear with me. But at some point, you just got to go, hey, I've been in bed for 2 weeks. I'm going to draw a line under this and I'm going to get on with getting on, because that is what the world's about. I don't think I'm contagious anymore. If I am, this place will never forgive me and you'll never see me on the airwaves again. Probably because the whole station will go off air because everyone will be ill. But I'm pretty sure after 2 weeks that I'm not contagious. I have just, I don't know, caused myself some sort of permanent damage as a result of this flu. But anyway, let's see. 3 hours to go. Wish me luck and keep me company. You know the number if you want to join in the conversation and give me a little bit of TLC R&R. 03444 99 1000 is the number to call. You can also use that number to send me a WhatsApp message or leave me a voice note on WhatsApp. 8722 is the number on text message. Remember, put Talk before your text. That way, it pings the aerials on top of Talk Towers and doesn't end up whirling around the atmosphere with the aliens and the orbs and the satellites and the spy balloons. At talkTV is our handle on X. And let your thoughts come in on everything we're going to be talking about. Let's kick off the show with someone who's suddenly decided they're going to have policies after all. That's right, leader of the Conservative Party, Kemi Badenoch. She's pledged to ban migrants claiming benefits from becoming UK citizens. She's also said she's going to kick out low-paid migrants. This is after, of course, saying that she's going to just have some mood music, some vibes, but wants to take her time before she decides what the policies are going to be after all. We're a good 4 years away from a general election, probably. But no, she's changed her tune. And she, I think, is deciding she's going to take the fight to Reform UK, who are now leading in the polls, beating the Conservative Party hands down by actually coming up with policies. But what do we think of them? Or more importantly, what does my next guest think of them? Dr. Rakib Ehsan, social policy analyst, all-round good egg. Dr. Rakib, great to have you on the programme. Now, the first
Alex,
thing...
how are you?
Well, loaded question, not great, but here, honestly, I feel like I deserve the Victoria Cross right now. Let's talk about this. So I've become rather hardline in the last 2 weeks of lying in bed and feeling sorry for myself. And when I read that she wants migrants who claim benefits being banned from ever settling in Britain under Conservative plans to tackle immigration, my first question is, well, why on earth should we have migrants languishing on benefits? Surely that should be for British citizens and British citizens alone. Am I missing something?
No, absolutely. We're meant to have a national welfare state. Day by day, it feels like you have more of an international welfare state. And I think that the Conservatives have a great deal to answer for, especially in the last parliamentary term. Immigration skyrocketed to unprecedented levels. And Alex, all too often we were told that our immigration system attracts the brightest and the best. We have a rigorous, highly selective immigration system. And that is what people wanted, especially those who voted for Brexit back in June 2016. That was not the immigration system that was introduced in the post-Brexit setting. There was these hyper-liberalising reforms to our immigration system. And ultimately what resulted was unprecedented levels of what I consider to be low paid migration. These are not migrants who are coming here and ultimately having a realistic chance of reaching a position of economic independence. Many may well be dependent on the welfare state and benefits. And I think that's a very serious problem. So I welcome this Conservative attempt to recognise that, but they have a great deal to answer for because many of the problems were created when they were in government.
Right, and like I said, I just don't feel that this goes far enough. I read an astonishing statistic the other day that for every social care worker that has come, 10 dependents of social care workers have come over. Well, that seems to me utterly mad, because you'd assume dependents are people who may be in education, who are using the health service, who will be essentially benefactors of the welfare system. And I'm there thinking, you know, I've lived and worked abroad in various countries. When my tenure of work has come to an end, I've come back home. I didn't stick around and said, now pay for me to live here for free while I'm not doing anything. Similarly, if when I've gone over to those countries and done work, I didn't take my grandmother or my father or my brother or my next door neighbour or my nan or my dog walker. I just went by myself. I had private health care when I was there because I had to as a condition of entry as part of the visa process. And you think to yourself, just saying, well, you know, if you're claiming benefits, then you can't claim citizenship as well. It doesn't seem good enough. If we were, as a country, to introduce a policy where we say you can come here to work, when you've finished work, you're off. You can come here to work, but actually you've got to pay for private health insurance as part of that deal. Would we suddenly find people from the developing world didn't want to come and work in the NHS? Would it cripple our public sector? Or would it actually still attract lots of people who see great opportunities in coming and being part of our workforce?
No, absolutely. I think what you'd also have, you'd have a more professionalised, higher quality form of migration coming into the country if you place those restrictions. And I think that that's what people want to see. I ultimately want a welfare system which is based on the contributory principle. We don't have that. And I think that the main issue here with our immigration system, you talked about the role of dependents coming to the UK. In recent times, over a 1-year period, 55% of student-related visas given to Nigerian nationals didn't go to students, they went to dependents. They went to the dependents, more than half. And I think that tells you a story of a broken immigration system. We want an immigration system which prioritises people who are productive, in my view, well educated, and I think ideally as well, originating from countries and parts of the world where there are similar social and cultural norms. And I think that gets missed a great deal from this conversation. We focus on the economics, but I think cultural compatibility matters as well.
Now, let's talk about the student thing, because to me, it is utterly crazy that you can come over here to be a student and bring dependents. You know, in my mind, students are young people who largely aren't married with kids. And if you're a student, you are probably not working and not paying taxes. So then to bring other people as dependents who rely on essentially your earnings if you're not earning money is foolish, is ridiculous. It makes no sense. But then at the same time, what we found out, I mean, one of my old alma maters, Cardiff, where I went to study journalism, is closing various courses in various departments because it says it's broke. It says the reason it's broke is because they're not getting enough cash money from international students. again, I've heard before that one of the reasons immigration was, crazy under the Conservatives is because when they discussed in Cabinet how they were going to curb the numbers coming in, every single department said, well, we can't restrict the visas for dependents for students because the universities say that if we did that, they're in trouble. And then Department of Health would say, we can't restrict dependents coming in of social care workers because the NHS and the social care sector says that it will cripple them. And then Department for Business says, well, we can't restrict the number of visas of people coming in because the hospitality sector says there'll be nobody to pull pints and carry plates. The DEFRA, Department of Food and Rural Affairs, said, well, we can't restrict the number of visas for seasonal agricultural workers because who's going to pick the fruit and veg? And I think to myself, do you know what? At some point, a government's got to turn around and say, unless we put a very hard cap on immigration, we're going to be in trouble demographically, and everyone's just going to have to deal with that. They're going to have to adapt.
No, absolutely. And I think you talked there about the agricultural sector. I think many of these roles, in my view, we need to look at automation. And I think generally we need to look at investing in productivity enhancing technologies. On top of that, for some time now, we simply haven't been investing in our own domestic workforce, whether that's skills training, apprenticeships, bursaries for health and social care, scholarships. And I think that's what I want to see. And I also want to see skills courses, not just for young people, but those who may be middle-aged as well, modernising their skill sets. We simply failed to invest in our own people. It's quite as simple as that. We've relied far too much on cheap foreign labour. And I think that there's been this myth that we needed this level of immigration in order to have economic growth. The reality is we have a low growth, high immigration, poor productivity model, and that needs to change. We need to break away from that. We need to invest in our own domestic workforce, and we need to get away from this addiction to mass immigration.
Right. I mean, countries like Germany, they've actually done an impact assessment, an economic impact assessment of immigration, have figured out actually that it's cost the economy there billions of pounds. I think if the government had the wit or the wisdom or the guts to do the same here, I think the findings would be very, very similar. And, you know, talking about things like fruit pickers, I saw a brilliant thing on X the other day. Bukele in El Salvador, their new president, who seems to be doing great things when it comes to tackling crime, a picture of loads of prisoners, loads of inmates, all sitting there seemingly at sewing machines or something like that working. And he's basically saying, other than murderers and rapists, everyone else is being put to work. And I think to myself, you know, work is dignity. We have a huge problem with recidivism in this country, with people coming out of prison with no earnings, no job to go to, no housing, back to the communities where they were offending, getting back into gang life, slipping back into crime straight away, when surely if we gave these people jobs and said to them, right, you've got to go to a different part of the country where you don't have any connections, a prison warder's going to be there, you're put in shared accommodation and you're going to go work in agriculture or you're going to go street sweeping or whatever it may be, I think that would be good. But I just get this impression that everything, the reasons we haven't made any of these decisions is because we've been permeated by this weird softness that we can't upset someone, that human rights come first, whatever they may be. And it's made us lose our minds, essentially, for making pragmatic policies that actually benefit the British people.
No, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I think that many of the solutions to many of our problems have to come from within. That's the truth of it. I think that we have a political establishment who seem to think that many of the solutions to our problems exist from outside the UK, when I think that many of the solutions are within the UK. And I think that we have to maximise our potential. I still think there is a great deal of potential that we're not maximising, in my view, and we have to make the most of the resources that we have. But I think you're absolutely right. In these kind of conversations, there's a great deal of talk about people's human rights. And then, of course, we should defend human rights, but I think we also have to look at the wider public interest as well, especially in the spheres of immigration and also asylum policy. But I think the key point is that when it comes to immigration, I think it is very much a majority view that immigration has been far too high in recent times. And I think that the best way to reduce immigration over time is having an active industrial policy in the UK. And I think that needs to be introduced as quickly and robustly as possible.
Do you think the Labour Party can actually do something about this? Because I note that they've spent £11.6 million so far in the first 6 months of being in power on deportation flights, whereas the Conservatives seem to struggle to get any such aeroplane off the ground. Is there a sort of political cover where the left wing can go a bit firmer and tougher? And do you think they've got the resolve to do this?
Well, it wouldn't be very difficult for the Labour Party to outflank the previous Conservative government on matters of immigration, because it was unprecedented levels of immigration that we saw in the last took place in the last parliamentary term. And I also think that some of these policies, they're steeped in Labour tradition. I think the idea that we have more bursaries, scholarships for health and social care, and to be honest, that's a sector that Labour is traditionally trusted on. Compared to the Conservatives, I think that the idea that that this kind of work, there's a dignity, there's a respect, and I think we need to talk about that. It should come with a certain social status as well. I think that Labour, in its own way, there can be a social revolution where it looks to wean the UK off its dependency on immigration, especially in sectors such as health and social care.
Rakib, it's always great catching up with you. What a lovely reintroduction back into life and work for me, being joined by you, Dr. Rakib Ehsan, my mum's favourite, as regular listeners know. Right, I want your thoughts on all of this. I mean, when it comes to immigration policy, what do you think we need to do? Is it just about capping numbers, or do we have to start being perhaps even more bold than that? Can we do it? Will a government have the guts to do it, or will they all be too scared of being called racist? Let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can send me a WhatsApp on that number or leave me a voice note. In fact, you know what? I would like a lot of voice notes today. This is a plea from a very poorly lady with vertigo to you at home. If you're feeling well enough, leave me a voice note, because that's just nice and easy. I don't have to read print then when my eyes are swimming around. I can just get someone in the gallery there to hit a button, and your sonorous tones will emanate across the airwaves. So there you go, the number for a voiceo, 0344 499 1000. You can text me 87222, or indeed we are on X at talkTV. I am back after this.
She is proposing a number of things. One, if you're jobless, you're low paid, you've been claiming benefits, then no, you can't settle indefinitely in the UK, and therefore you wouldn't be allowed to then claim citizenship. She's also saying if you've entered the country legally, you're only allowed to apply for indefinite leave to remain once you've been in the country for 10 years, not the current 5 years, and after that you have to wait another 5 years before you are allowed to claim, attempt to apply for citizenship. I mean, I think most people would just be stunned to learn that you can be here for just 5 years.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, hello there. I'm just going to read this message from David in the Cotswolds, who says, I worked in Dubai for 8 years and Spain for 15 years. I had to have a contract and private medical insurance. I couldn't just bring my mum with me. This is the point, isn't it? I mean, what is going on when you've got people coming over here to study, which means they're not earning money, to study, and they're bringing their kids, they're bringing dependents? Make that make sense. How is that ever good for our economy? Who are we helping by doing that? Not us, that's for sure. We need to get tough. We need to get realistic. Here's Sir Keir Starmer, the man to do it. Well, one thing that Sir Keir Starmer is doing, apparently, is he's made a secret visit to Southport this morning, just a day after his government ruled that Ruda Cabana's anti-terror case was closed prematurely. I don't know if you've seen that report, but 3 opportunities that people from Prevent failed in their duties to make sure the future killer was closely monitored. I think, frankly, he should have been locked up in a padded cell by the sounds of things. These people who worked for Prevent, it was spelling mistakes, and they were just copying and pasting things. Lazy, feckless, reckless. And look what happened as a result. Where's their accountability? I'm sorry, but these people should be named and shamed and lose their jobs. If I stuffed up that badly in my line of work, sitting here in a studio, believe you me, they would not have me back through that door and sitting behind this desk, because that's how it works in the private sector. Anyway, speaking to Talk, one local in Southport said the Prime Minister visited a sixth form college where half the school was cordoned off and Range Rovers blocked the streets. Furious locals have taken to social media to express their outrage over Sir Keir Starmer's surprise visit. Susie said, how dare Keir Starmer come back to our hometown of Southport? He kept that one quiet, didn't he? I wonder why. Straight to our college to talk lies to our children. Well, Downing Street didn't deny the Prime Minister's whereabouts when asked by this station. Let's speak to a local now, Norman Wallace, who's the CEO of Southport Pleasureland. Norman, what do you make of Sir Keir Starmer's visit to Southport? I mean, one might say that the reason he wants to do it privately is because he wants to do it sincerely, that this isn't a press event, that he genuinely does want to go speak to locals, express sorrow at the events that's happened, all the things that Southport has faced. And actually, by telling the press he's going there, it just becomes a sort of media pandemonium. And perhaps this was the right way of doing things.
Well, it seems a little bit more like Sneaky Joe Stalin than Sir Keir Starmer. You know, I'm actually outside the college where he was. It doesn't make any sense for him to come and do what he's done. The town is a great town to live, a great town to visit, and a great place to work. And, you know, we should be coming and having conversations with the entrepreneurs, with the business people of the town, to really find out what's happening here and what we need. And as you just alluded to, if someone in industry did something wrong and someone was hurt, well, then there would be hell to play. In my industry, it would be terrible, you know. And fortunately, we're a very safe industry. Just a few years ago, a lady in a council officer in Barrow-in-Furness did not do the correct maintenance, and I believe that she went to jail because of some disease that people caught within the offices. And you know, there's got to be some recompense here for what's happened.
Right.
You know, we can't allow this to happen again.
Yeah. Well, if you did, I mean, you, for instance, CEO of Southport Pleasureland, if you didn't do the proper health and safety and someone got injured or, you know, there was a fatal accident at the theme park, you would be shut down. And yet these people haven't done their jobs properly. The result has been utterly horrific. Lives have been lost. It makes no sense to me that they are not being held accountable. How is your business doing, by the way? What is the mood like in Southport?
Well,
Because poor Southport. I mean, not only was there the horrific incident with the little girls at the Taylor Swift dance class, but then the upheaval, the rioting. Has it actually impacted on business? What's the mood like in Southport?
Well, let me just explain something to you. You're more likely to get hurt on the way to a theme park than you are at the theme park. Okay? The safest form of travel is aircraft. So whenever there's an incident with an aircraft or anything to do with rides, the press jump all over it. So let's get the first thing straight there. But we are so much governed by health and safety rules that everything has to be perfect. And so the same should affect other industries and local government and government. If they do wrong, well then there should be some price to pay. And as for Southport, as I said, it's a great place to live, great place to work, and it's a great place to visit. But this has obviously impacted, and much of that is because of the press interest in it. But we've got to look at some of the good things now. It has been pretty terrible, but we've got to move forward, allow these families to grieve, allow these people to move on. And if he wants to come to Southport, let's do the right thing. Let's not do sneaky things and not tell anybody about it. Let's get him speaking to the right people. I've written to him recently. I've written to all the leaders of the parties and many others. Angela Rayner, the Prime Minister, Nigel Farage, and I haven't had one response, not one. So I think it's time that we did have a conversation and the government do the right thing.
Yeah, well, what were you asking them, by the way, if you don't mind me asking you?
Well, because of their negligence, the town has suffered very badly in numerous ways. And so they need to be having conversations with the people that they've caused a problem for. If I caused someone a problem, I would be in trouble, I would be in court, or I would be in jail. So they need to be doing the right thing. We're all equal.
Yeah.
Let's do the right thing. We supposedly live in a free country.
How are most people in Southport now? I mean, what is it? It's hard to sort of, say what everyone in a particular area feels like. But, I remember, for instance, I'm a girl from Gloucester, and I was very young, actually, in the sort of wake of the whole horrific Cromwell Street, Fred West story. But it's been a dark cloud that has hung over Gloucester for a very, very long time. And unless you're from an area that has been through such a tragedy, it's very hard to explain to somebody what that does do to a community, how it affects the psychology of a community. What are people in South, how are they feeling now after all of this?
The community of Southport has come together. We've got a great community here. We've got a very clever community. And a very hopeful community. So this is not going to affect us long term other than the families directly involved. Southport's a great place and we will move on and we will be more successful than ever before.
That's the attitude. It's been wonderful catching up with you. That's Norman Wallace, the CEO of Southport Pleasureland. And, if you're near to the area, even if you're not, why don't you go and show some support for Southport? They've been through a lot, haven't they? So go visit the place. Go put some money in the local economy. Go show that you care with a vote of confidence. I'm going to take a short break now, but after that I'm delighted. So I'm going to be joined in the studio by the political editor of The Sun, Harry Cole, to chew over everything political. That's coming up after this.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, hello, welcome back to the show. I'm delighted to say that I'm joined now by Harry Cole, political editor of The Sun. It's nice having you in the studio.
Hello.
Hello, darling.
Yeah,
How
it's
are
been a
you?
while.
I haven't seen you for ages.
I know.
Yeah. We go back quite a long way, don't we? I remember you in your Guido days.
Oh, wow, that was a while.
Back when I was head of media for UKIP.
Yes,
Yeah.
we used to,
We used to
have a
occasionally-
frank exchange of views.
Yeah, we used to bump into each other from time to time. But yeah, great to have you here. Thank you for making the long journey up from the...
all the way from floor 12.
From floor 12, yeah.
The whole 4 minutes.
Well, thank you. If it's 4 minutes, you've done well with the lift, haven't you? Now, you, of course, have the brilliant show, Never Mind the Ballots, which appears on
every
YouTube
Thursday.
every Thursday.
Out
and
there
a
on Talk.
great thing it is as well. And you were joined for this edition by former Tory leadership candidate Robert Jenrick. He's now, Shadow Justice Secretary. Shaved his head, took the Ozempic, fighting...
And also, he doesn't really... He tends to stray quite often off of his justice brief as well. He's a one-man sort of opposition machine, really. He doesn't seem to be... He's sort of, the campaign sort of
He's
never
like that
stops, really.
Japanese soldier who doesn't realise the war's over. It's
I
like the
mean,
leadership contest is done, Rob.
Or do we expect? I do think the problem the Tories have at the moment is there's not enough of them. They're so diminished in Parliament. Actually, one of them making lots of noise seems to sort of be head and shoulders over the rest of them. And actually, I think a few more of them should be taking a few more swings of the bat, because at the moment you're not really hearing a huge amount from them. Kemi aside. I keep getting told off for lying down.
I like that. No, I fancy that.
Apparently I'm too loose.
I've had a bit of vertigo and stuff,
it's
so
nearly
actually that's
5
quite
o'clock.
nice.
It's been a long day.
I'm going to be told off in a minute. They're going to be able to sit
And also,
up
you've got the
straight.
heating on in here, like it's going
Well,
out of fashion. Don't you know there's a war on?
I haven't got the hot water bottle, so I need something to keep
honestly,
me...
it's about 40 degrees in it.
Is it?
Yeah.
Or maybe you've got this.
Oh, no, please no.
You never know. You might have inauguritis.
Inauguritis.
Inauguritis,
Did you go to the inauguration?
Yeah. Well, not the actual thing,
No,
because that was sort of...
Well, because it was so
back.
cold, really. That's why you've been ill.
God, it was so cold. Like minus 11. That's not even an exaggeration. It was actually minus 11 in the middle of the daytime. It was like walking into a walk-in freezer. It was giving me nosebleeds, and now I've got this, I don't know, brain damage or something. But anyway...
Golly, you've been in the wars. We listen to Robert Jenrick.
We're talking about in the wars. If there is one, we might not have a military base in the Chagos Islands, might we? Let's have a listen to Robert Jenrick on that subject.
I think this is one of the worst deals that I can remember. We are giving away British sovereign territory to an ally of China, and we're paying them for the privilege of doing that. We don't know the precise amount because Keir Starmer won't be honest and come to Parliament and tell us. But we hear in the Mauritian Parliament that it could be anything from 9 to 18 billion pounds. And bear in mind, think of what your viewers are going through at the moment. Times are tough. This is a government that's taking away people's winter fuel allowance. It's a government that is imposing new taxes, like on farmers. They can't hand their farms on to their kids and their grandkids. And at the same time, they're finding billions and billions of pounds for this. And this is something that Keir Starmer could end tomorrow. I want him to come to Parliament to say that the Chagos Islands are British. They will always be British.
Can you make this make sense to me? Because, I mean, to break this down, we know that essentially it's about 2,000 miles away, isn't it, from Mauritius? They've never controlled the Chagos Islands. They were just sort of co-governed when the British controlled both of them. Some sort of international court rulings happen, some sort of
non-binding ruling at the ICJ.
Non-binding don't mean anything. And all of a sudden, Sir Keir Starmer wants to pay Mauritius £18 billion to have our territory, which we don't have to give to them, which has a critical US military base on.
Shared military base,
which could be taken over by China, who are actually building fake atolls and seaports all over the place to try and control maritime routes. Does he work for Beijing?
It's bonkers, isn't it? I can't get my head around it. There's been a bit of a rearguard action in the last 24 hours to try and sort of defend this deal, which basically they're saying because of this ruling at the ICJ means that actually lots of regulators around the world, all these things we've signed up to, various telecommunications and satellite regulators, all based in Switzerland and all run by the UN, and they're basically taking this UN judgment as binding, and it means that one day they could essentially turn off the our access to the satellite. Basically, it's a big listening station as well.
Yeah,
it's got two things. It's lots of spying. It's got lots of nuclear. It services our nuclear arsenal, things like that. So they're worried. Basically, they're saying there's a chance that one day we might not be able to operate out of it, but it would be quicker and easier and cheaper to tell the UN to get staff.
Just go.
Than it would to. And look at Donald Trump just pulls out of random, all of these.
Right.
Not in the WHO. He's pulled out of other conventions as well, and he just does it with the flick of the pen.
Good. As you should do.
No one else is signing up with these manuals. America, China, Russia, even some European countries don't, follow the letter of the laws.
To the UN.
Also, it's a complete joke because the people that voted the people that backed this motion at the UN were our adversaries, China, Russia. The people.
Of course they did.
Of course they want to see it. They're trying to make it difficult for this base to operate because they don't want it there.
But, Sir Keir Starmer's not stupid. He's not stupid. And he's very deliberately, it seems to me, gone over to Beijing as one of his, Rachel Reeves was one of their first big set-piece events. And didn't he say something like, oh, well, there's this security briefing that Kemi Badenoch didn't come and get, and we can't say what it is
except that then transpired he hadn't actually invited her. She just hadn't asked to be told about it.
What is the security briefing? That, Beijing's got compromat on
it's basically that there is... Basically, it's what the base is for, and if that was in jeopardy, then obviously national security is at threat. And again, it goes back to our nuclear arsenal, our nuclear submarines, and it's basically a ginormous listening session. The other thing I can't get my head around it is if it's a joint airbase with the US, why are we picking up the tab? Why are we paying the ones on the hook for $9 billion? Because they're the ones that are using it, and
they've got more money than we do. Quite frankly.
More money than we do. Yeah.
Do you think Donald Trump's going to sort of,
I suspect so. We also had Natalie Winters on the show today as well, who is sort of Trump. She's a sort of Trump supporting journalist, if that makes sense. And she's saying that all the mood music they're getting out of DC is that Trump and Marco Rubio, the new Secretary of State, are going to, gently put a pillow on this.
Right. So it's basically give this to Mauritius and we'll give you some tariffs.
Well, I think someone said a great line the other day. Said the easiest way to convince Donald Trump that this is a good deal was tell him it breaks international law, because he just doesn't care. But
what happens if you break international law? Do you go to international law prison?
What is the UN going to do?
Right.
UN and what army? What are they going to do? Also, the UN can't do anything without action on the Security Council. And who's at the Security Council? The Brits and the Americans. So it's this adherence to this sort of idea, the sort of late 90s idea that actually international law was the global pursuit and the global advance of man, that we've got to a higher plane. It's above countries, above states and that grubbiness, and there's this higher calling. It's almost a kind of religion of international law. And actually everything has to be in line and in order and in international law, or you're basically a fascist.
Right, but this is the thing. You're making what is essentially just a gentleman's agreement with a load of murderous, warmongering thugs who aren't going to be part of it. It's an ideology
that means that there's a higher calling beyond the nation state, and that's the sanctity of international law. But at the end of the day, it's just words. It's just things we've agreed, and lots of countries have agreed it and then gone back on it, and nothing happens.
Yeah,
nothing happens.
People would say, of course, that this could play into the hands of Reform UK. Let's have a listen to what Jenrick has to say about them.
What happens with reform? At some point, they are going to be consistently ahead of you in the polls. At what point do the Tory party say, you know what, if you add up reform and the Conservatives, you're on 45-50% of the market. Why don't you do a deal?
Well, firstly, Reform themselves have said they don't want to do it.
You're splitting the Reform vote.
Reform has said repeatedly that they have
they're going to say that now. That's the art of the deal, isn't it? They're good negotiators.
They have no intention of doing this. Kemi has said that she doesn't want to do it either. We are two separate.
You've got to have a non-aggression pact at the very least, right?
My whole mission is to bring home all the small C Conservatives in this country back to the Conservative Party. We should be their natural home. We're not at the moment because of the mistakes that we made in office, the very serious mistakes.
Don't you think Rob would just be better going to Reform at this point? I like you splitting Reform vote. Very good.
I said to him on the show, basically, would you be doing better than Kemi Badenoch? And it took him a couple of goes to say, no, she's brilliant. But, he is a man that, I think that he's almost like the sort of king over the water. They're going to have a lot of the Tory party looking at him thinking, you know what, did we get this wrong? Kemi didn't have a great week at PMQ. She's slightly all over the plot. There's been a big sort of bust-up at Conservative HQ. And I just think, and that sort of psychological moment where, I think it was YouGov last week, was it Friday or the weekend or Monday? At some point.
Blurred into one
very recently, YouGov, who are sort of, a gold standard pollster, I think we'd probably put them as, have had reform ahead of not only the Tories but ahead of Labour as well. And I think the more that plays on the Tory psyche and in the shadow cabinet, it's just going to start sending them round and round the bend. And it's really interesting that he won't say, I pushed him there a few times, he wouldn't say no to a deal with reform. Whereas now Kemi's spokesman has come out today and said, well, after that, got very cross about that and said, no, there will be no deal, there will be no deal. But no one believes it, because the more they look at it, and they look at the electoral map, if you add up the Tories and you add up reform, you are basically at 50%. So half of the country. Right. And so you think, well, you know, you'd be nuts not to do the deal.
The thing is, though, the Conservatives lost a lot of seats to the Liberal Democrats. And so they've always had to sort of cover both flanks, haven't they? And in the Cameron era, they went to the Liberal Democrat side, had a coalition, of course, with Nick Clegg. More recently, they sort of have tried to move over to the sort of Farage side. And I think, by and large, and, you know, you might disagree with me here, I think, by and large, UKIP and the Brexit Party were very useful to the Conservatives, because it pulled them to the right, kept them honest, and because people thought, well, UKIP stroke Brexit Party can't win seats, those seats actually ended up going to the Conservatives. So that's not the story anymore.
No, I don't think so. I think also that the country was sick to death of the Tories. That was clear. After 14 years, they wanted to give them an absolute spanking, and they got that. But then they were promised change with Labour, but it hasn't really delivered. And I think, you know, we started thinking, running out of options of, well, you know, nothing's working. Labour, same chaos, same problems, same NHS that's money being poured down the drain, and no service improving, same sluggish growth, same civil service that, you know, doesn't seem to be able to reform, same issue, all the same problems are there.
Nothing radical.
And you think eventually people are just going to go, you know what?
Let's give someone completely different a go.
And look at Donald Trump. It's a little bit like, you know what? I'm not going to swear because I always swear on the show and I always get told off.
We love that, though.
But it's a little bit like,
we can press a special button.
It's just like, you know what? Let's just press the big red button. You know what? Just blow it up.
Let's just go Farage.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the voice coach.
Oh yeah.
What is this about? Because, like, you know, I kind of feel all the copy I've read on this.
You want your money back, wouldn't you?
Something, you would want to get a refund. But what I don't get is, what is Christmas Eve? What's he going to do? Make a speech to the turkey? Like, what? I mean, what big event was he doing on Christmas Day of all days?
If you cast your mind back in 2020, it was a mad one, because we were in the middle of this sort of it was basically tier 4 lockdown, and ended up being about a week later full lockdown. But then there was Boris Johnson's mad dash to get a Brexit deal, and they wanted it done by Christmas, and it was like 4 p.m. on Christmas Eve. There was a mad press conference, all done virtually. I remember sitting in that press conference, and like it was on Zoom. So there was that sort of all going on. But then for the last few years, we basically didn't know anything about this woman. She sort of emerged in this book. So we had Keir Starmer's biographer on the show today. It's all on YouTube. You know, the internet is getting a little carried away with this, because she's quite glamorous. She's got quite a fruity history, should we say?
She's had some interesting jobs.
Her ex-husband was what we might describe as a not quite softcore porn actor, but certainly has been in some 1970s smutty. I love the word. We don't hear the word smutty enough.
No, you don't.
So look, she's quite glamorous. So there has been lots of speculation and lurid internet rumours, but the biographer assures me it's nothing but a professional relationship.
Right.
No,
funny that you just bring it up, though.
Well,
but nothing to see here. I'm going to mention it, but there's nothing to see here.
Yeah,
but you know, the thing is,
people need answers.
He's worried about, it's a hugely political moment in time. There's all these ructions going on in Parliament, the Brexit deal, all the rest of it. He needs to know how to handle this. So why does he need to bus in someone from, Brighton with a dream catcher and her incense sticks and her magic crystals? Like, what's she going to do? How's she going to solve the political
She said basically, like, the guy was a terrible speaker, he was totally wooded, and he was, she was there to sort of let him out of his shell a little bit and help him. But he has got better at it. If you think back to when he started as Labour leader in 2020, and around that time, he was even more sort of
I think it's
nerdy.
The fake glasses that help.
The free glasses, don't forget.
The free fake glasses.
But there is also, there's just something a little bit, it's an Mr. Starmer, there's something just a little bit insincere about him, in the fact that, like, it goes back to that, the suits, the glasses, the letting a donor dress your wife, and the voice coach, and it's like, well, will the real Keir Starmer one day please stand up?
Okay, let's talk about the real Keir Starmer, right? I haven't read this book. Was it called again?
It's called Get In, and it's by two very good friends from the Times, Patrick Maguire and Gabriel.
I don't like the name Get In.
Get In. Well, I think they had They had another book. They had another
Get
book.
Out.
They had another one called Get Out, which is about getting rid of Corbyn.
Oh, right, was it?
And this,
I
I think,
see.
was no, it was Left Out, Left Out, and now it's Get In. And also, I think that's kind of what apparently.
What I want to know, because I'm obsessed with this, and I don't think the media talk about it enough. The fact that young Keir Starmer was in a Soviet workers' camp. That's mental. The media were crazed about whatever David Cameron might have done with a pig skull, but what on earth? You have the now Prime Minister on the other side of the Iron Curtain during the Cold War being run by a Czech spy, and everyone's like, yeah, nothing to see here. Now he's just giving away the Chagos Islands. I'm like,
are you suggesting that he might be the sort of, like the Manchurian candidate?
Yeah, I think he's some sort of commie plant. I think he still is. That's the only way to explain some of the policies.
It's not even 10 to 5 and we're on to commie plants. And
but come on, do you not think there's something... why is the media not talking about that?
I honestly think he's too boring to be a communist spy, I'm afraid.
But he was working for a communist spy.
Hang on, wasn't he? No, what was it?
Who goes on a gap year to a workers' camp?
Lefties in the 80s, it's all the rage, wasn't it?
I don't know, I was like...
I wasn't, I certainly didn't.
I
bet you had a Che Guevara t-shirt at some point.
No.
I bet you went through like a 3-week lefty phase.
Do you know what? As a strange little child, I actually had the word Maastricht on my notice board.
That is the saddest thing I've ever heard.
I know, but no one can question my Brexit credentials, right? I was for Maastricht.
That's like William Hague. That's like William Hague admitting that he used to sort of read Margaret Thatcher's speeches under the covers. It's up there with that, I'm afraid.
Sweet. I used to do a good impression of Tom King. Apparently, we used to watch politics on the telly.
That's former Defence Secretary.
Yeah, I used to do a good impression of him as a primary school kid.
Yeah, I've actually been to Maastricht. It's very nice.
Yes, lovely, isn't it?
You can see the exact table they sat at when they signed away our sovereignty. Yeah.
Oh, one day they'll have the exact table that Sir Keir Starmer sat at as he signed away the Chagos Islands.
Well, if it goes through, I think Donald Trump's gonna kick it. I think.
Let's hope so. Harry Cole, brilliant to have you here. So people can watch Never Mind the Ballots tonight.
On talkTV. No, all right, it's up there right now.
It's there right now?
It's right there on the talkTV YouTube page and in The Sun. On The Sun website, in The Sun newspaper. I'm a 360 content machine.
You are indeed. It's been brilliant having you here. I've really enjoyed it.
I'll see you next week, hopefully.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Harry. Right, going to take a short break now. After the break, it's your opportunity to get in touch, get on the blower, let me know what you think about, well, whatever, really. You know how it is, fast and loose when I'm at the helm of the radio studios. 03444 499 1000 is the number to call to have a chinwag with me. You can use that to send me a WhatsApp message or leave me a voice note. 8722 is the number of a text message. Right, talk before your message, so it pings the aerials on top of Talk Towers. We're on X at talkTV, and I'm back and waiting to hear from you after this.
in every department, it's a bit like this. The civil servants go, OK, well, here's our overall budget. And the minister's like, OK, well, you can't touch the big stuff. And so the civil servants go off and they find the small stuff. And then you get toxic stories about, government proposes cutting special rail transport for veterans and things like that. And it all adds up. So actually, whilst I fully support the government's objectives here, Rachel Reeves needs to be clear that this is not just a civil service problem.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, my lovelies. Right, time for some of your messages and calls. Welcome back. Someone says, hope you're feeling better and your cat kept you company. That's from Margaret and Lisa in Birmingham. My little cat Mog is actually on a sojourn with my parents in Gloucester at the moment because I was going to America for inauguration and I didn't want to lock her in the house by herself. So she's terrorising my parents, running around their house, bringing in mice too, I think, so far she's brought in. But she doesn't bring them in dead. This is the problem. She brings them in perfectly alive and well and just leaves them to run and hide under the sofa. Kind of the opposite of what a cat is supposed to do. Someone said, yay, Alex P is back. Well, thank you for that. It's good to see you back. Hope they're taking good care of you in the studio, says John in Lincolnshire. They are indeed. Look, they've just bought me a packet of Parma violets. That is a blast from the past. I'm going to fill my face with some of these good sugary treats. Normally, I don't do sort of ultra-processed food and sweeties and sugars, but since I've been so poorly, I've basically been living off packets of crisps and, all sorts of naughty things that I don't normally consume. One needs their sugars and their carbs, don't they, when they're not too well? Someone else, what's your opinions? 2 weeks of flu after returning from the inauguration. My bottom, it's the world's longest hangover. Welcome back. I tell you, it feels like a hangover, but it's not. And hi, Alex, please, you're feeling better and back on Talk. You've certainly had a rough time, says Stephen. I'm still having a rough time now. Honestly, if you were in my brain right now, it's like getting off the waltzers. I feel like I've been at a fairground and I'm just sort of like floating around like this. When I looked at myself in the mirror earlier, it's like one of those sort of like, creepy mirrors from the House of Horrors at the fun fair, unless this is what I normally look like. But not great. If anyone's an expert on vertigo or labyrinthitis or vestibulitis, whatever this brain damage is that I have, let me know what I can do to get rid of it, because I'm not enjoying it. Let's speak now to Brian, who is in the best county of all the counties, Gloucestershire. Hi, Brian. How are you?
Oh, yeah. 20 miles from your place, Forest of Dean.
Hey, you're in the forest, are you?
Yeah.
Where in the forest?
I'd rather not say when I'm going to say what I've got to, because I think there's things going on because of what I'm going to say to you.
Wow, tell me.
We've got a lot of problems here with Eastern Europeans, end of argument.
Right.
Creating havoc in the town. We've been to the police commissioner, we've been to the council, right, and they're all backing off it. But one of the local places, it's a house of multiple occupancy. There's a chap living in there. There's mail thrown everywhere. It's all open. There are letters for £8,000, £13,000 for education for people that are not living there. There are big bills for council tax. Gas, the lot, and they're not being, right, the relevant people have been informed and they won't touch it.
So you're basically saying, you think these people are basically working as gangs, sort of, like we had that case, didn't we? Was it an Albanian gang or Bulgarian gang? I think it's an Albanian gang, who was sort of making false welfare claims and stuff like that.
It's mad in the town. We've had meetings for 5 years to try and sort the place out with the council, the police and whatever. And one of the locals had a chat with one of the police and said, look, we want this sorted out or what. And his words to them was, they're going nowhere, you move.
What? That's crazy. Yeah, I keep hearing of this sort of soft touch from police, especially when it comes to people who are concerned about crimes being committed by foreigners. And it's like, well, we can't deal with that. We might be racist. Brian, my butt, that's
I've sat in council meetings, and I was actually called a racist in the one. But fair play to one of the councillors, he piped up. He said, "No, he's not. He's asked you a question."
Right.
So far to the left, well, I said she can see her own back. I mean, that's my sense of humour. But I mean, they're supposed to be looking after everybody.
Right. You know, at the end of the day, if people are committing crimes, if they're being disruptive, if they're trashing their local community, if they're causing criminal damage, if they're making false welfare claims, whatever it may be, we're all equal under eyes of the law, and everybody needs to be investigated. That is the job of the blimmin' police, you would think. Brian, my butt. But there you go. See, I know my Forester Dean lingo. It's been wonderful catching up with you. I have a feeling I know which town you might be calling from as well, being a bit of an expert in the local area. Wonderful area it is too. If people haven't visited the Forester Dean, go there. It's gorgeous. Right, let's speak now to Peter, who's in Somerset. Oh, we're getting a lot of West Country today, aren't we? Right, Babber?
Well, it's actually North Somerset, Alex. And you're a Gloucester girl, aren't you?
I am, yeah.
Yeah, right, okay. No, what I was ringing for was just to express my disgust at that despicable man who operates out of number 10. For him to troll off to Southport because that dodgy report yesterday of Prevent, to try and go there and second best ingratiate himself with those people who have suffered so greatly. He really is the pits. And I think Isabel earlier today said he is despised. And I think that is the word. He is utterly despised.
Not just by the people in Southport, I'm sure. We've actually got Isabel coming up on the show a bit later. But you're right, there's something lily-livered and weak. I mean, you know, I don't understand who's advising him sometimes and the optics surrounding him. He doesn't ever do anything that shows courage unless it's going after his own people, pointing the accusatory finger, calling people far right, making decisions because of international law that don't represent British interests. I mean, sometimes you think, where are you the Prime Minister of? Are you the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom? You're the Prime Minister of Beijing? Like, who do you represent? I'm afraid, Peter, I agree with you. I'm pretty appalled by this, but got to play devil's advocate. Perhaps he thought by letting it become a big press event, it would actually distract from what he wanted to do when he was there. Well, we won't know, will we? Because we didn't know he was going, so we didn't get to see any of it. Thank you to Peter in Somerset for your call. Going to take a short break now, but when I come back, I'm delighted to say I'm going to be joined right here in the studio by Monty.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, welcome back. Do you know what? I've got just having a fascinating conversation in the ad break there with Tim Montgomery, former number 10 advisor, who joins me in the studio.
Alex, it's been too long since I've been with you.
Way too long. And do you know why? Because I've been poorly, and this is what we've been speaking about. Yeah. I was saying to you earlier, wasn't I, those of you who've been listening for the first hour, that I had something. Inauguritis is what I've called it. Flu, don't know what it was. So it laid me up in bed terribly. And since then, I cannot shake this horrific vertigo.
Yeah.
Tim's got it as well.
Yeah. No, I was just saying that as I walk along the road, and this is before I've had a pint or two or a glass of wine, I walk like along the road, unsteady, almost like a drunk.
Yeah.
And I can't shake it. It's been like it for 2 weeks.
Mine's 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Mine's 2 weeks, and it's like your hearing feels funny.
Yeah.
And if I look down and look up, it's like going up in an elevator.
Yep.
And like even right now, I just feel pushes you on the edge of feeling kind of sick actually because you're dizzy.
I don't feel like that, but people can probably hear I've got a bit of a sore throat.
Yeah.
And have you had that?
No, so I'm beginning to, I feel like I'm sort of starting to develop the sore throat. It hit me first of all like a sort of flu, very poorly, in bed, you know, just out for the count, completely whacked. And then I've just got now this, like even right now, the back of my head feels this funny pressure, and I just feel like I've just got off the waltzers.
Well, but I've had more sort of lunches and dates cancelled in the last few weeks rather than I normally have. So I think there's quite a lot of illness around.
I think this is funny, right? Because I know a number of people, I was just saying earlier, I phoned up Dr. Renee Hunderkamp going, I don't know what to do about this. I've got to get rid of this vertigo. And she's like, I've got it. She's ill on her safe with it. Yeah. So many people seem to have this, and it's weird. I've never had anything like this before. And do you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of when I lost my taste and smell with COVID, and I thought, well, this is a weird symptom. And it was before it was being discussed out there in the world. The amount of people, basically, it seems like something affecting the ears.
Yeah, definitely.
If it's, if it's affecting balance and hearing and vertigo, it's something that's infecting the ear canals somehow. And it is remarkable the amount of people now I can count. I need, five hands to count the amount of people I know personally who are saying to me they've got the dizzies.
Yeah,
the
dizzies.
What is going on?
What a good name for it. That's exactly what it is.
The dizzies.
Yeah, I think I call it the wobblies, given if I am. People watch me walking along the road.
It's not nice, but anyway, thank you for braving it and coming in here. You said to me,
we should launch our health swaps.
I know, you came to me and said, I really hope I don't give you this, and I'm like, well, I'll beat you to the punch there, my friends. I've got it. Decongestants is what I'm living on, and decongestants and prayers, and maybe we're just going to be permanently brain damaged. Who knows? Let's talk.
Some people think probably we already are, but we'll put that to one side.
Bit late for that. Let's talk about Kemi Badenoch, shall we? Because she sort of, for the first time, decided that this whole I'm not going to announce policies because I'm better than that and I'm going to take my time wasn't working, wasn't it? She's looked at the polls and gone, better have some policies.
I don't know if you've seen the poll, the latest poll that's come out this afternoon, but the Tories are on 18 or 19%, certainly below 20, and Reform are up to 29.
Woo.
So you're not looking at Reform narrowly ahead now. You know, the whole Conservative sort of thing about waiting, not having any policies, waiting for Reform to implode, it ain't working.
It's not going to work.
It ain't working.
No.
I'm on this WhatsApp group with sort of fellow Conservative commentators, and they don't really like the Reform Party, and they don't really like what I've done. They're relatively polite to me because they've seen, I'm a friend, but they really don't like Reform, and they can't hide it for very long. And I said, the thing is, the split on the right is real, and you're trying to pretend it's going to go away, and the Tory party are automatically going to sort of revert to the position they've always had, which is the primary party of the right. I said, you're out of touch.
Why don't they like Reform? Because this is one thing I try to understand. When people have such an aversion, I'm like, why?
I think there's a whole combination of reasons, and I think one thing I have noticed, Alex, is there is a difference between the Reform member and the Reform leadership. The Reform members are very much like how I used to know the Conservative Party. All through my life, sort of really ordinary mainstream people.
Proper people.
One criticism I would make of the Reform leadership is I think there's a bit of a cockiness to them at the moment. And it's like when they're tweeting out about the opinion polls, we're storming into government, people don't like that. And I think they should, I think much more the communication should be, we're doing well, we're really pleased with your support, but we don't take anything for granted, and we know we've got work to do in order to get over the line. And so I think some of what my previous fellow Conservatives were reacting to is a certain sort of cockiness amongst
the swaggering.
The swagger. That's a good way of putting it. Sounds like we're mixing our first conversation with our second conversation, talking about swaggering. But and also I think they don't like the language that Nigel Farage uses about destroying the Conservative Party.
Right, because these people have been sort of, loyal Conservatives for a long time. I suppose if you've been a member of something and you've put time and effort and energy into a particular band, then all of a sudden it's not doing so well, and the people who are sort of stealing the thunder are going, ha ha, Yaboo sucks. You're going to find that grating, aren't you?
But in a way, it sounds like it's childish. But who started this? It wasn't Nigel Farage who started this. It was the Conservative Party failing to do anything that it said it would do. In fact, doing the opposite, putting up immigration, failing to deliver home ownership, putting up taxes. We all know what they did and what they didn't do.
The thing is, though, so Kemi Badenoch, clearly...
Badenoch.
Not
Badenoch. But Badenoch.
Too bad. Anyway, Kemi Badenoch, she seems to have suddenly gone, right, the do-nothing approach is...
Really? She will not be leader by the time of the next election. I'm absolutely convinced.
Will it be generic, do you think?
I don't know whether it'll be generic, because a lot of the Conservatives that I talk to who like Badenoch, they hate generic as much as they hate Farage.
So what do they want? They just want to go for sort of a wet Conservative or one nation?
They don't know what they want.
To be honest, it'd be easier for the voters out there if they just decided to go down that route and fend off the Lib Dems and say we're going to be centrist dads. It'd be easier because people would know who to vote for then.
Well, the thing is, 40% of the Conservative Party are basically Liberal Democrat, govern whatever the principle is.
They like to think they're right-wing and Conservative, but actually
they're just on the right. And then there are probably a third to a half of the Conservative Party that's probably Conservative and basically agrees with the Reform voter. It's a party that needs to split. Fundamentally, it's a broken split. And Kemi Badenoch is trying to hold it together. And so she's not leading it. To lead the Conservative Party is to split it.
Yeah.
And it's the best thing Boris Johnson did, I would say, was when he threw out the 21 MPs who were trying to block Brexit.
Right, the Greaves and the Soubris, gosh, remembering those ghouls.
Badenoch needs to do something similar. She needs to decide, this is what we believe.
What are you going to be?
Like something on the ECHR, and those that won't back her on that,
get out.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Go.
No, I agree.
But I don't think she's brave enough to do that.
No, and people, I've heard a lot of people criticise that her sort of party sponsors, if you will, the people who back her, tend to be more from that sort of, posh dinner party set.
Well, you may have seen this week they're having to move out of the Tory HQ in central London because they've basically run out of money.
Really, they can't afford it.
A lot of the donors have gone to Reform or are just sitting on their hands. They've seen the Tory party waste so much money over the years. They saw Rishi Sunak blow an incredible amount of money at the election, and they've had enough. Quite rightly, they don't want to give any more money to the Conservative Party. So the few that are left tend to be even more of the kind that you've just described, Alex.
Right.
They are even more the centrist people, because the right-wingers are proper Conservatives, in my view.
The Rory Stewarts of this world.
Well, they're not that bad, don't be rude. But they're basically the same as that sort of philosophy. And, the Tory party's in a lot of trouble. And I don't say that with any glee. It was a big part of my life for a long time.
Let's talk about the sort of fight back, though, where she's now pledging to ban migrants who claim benefits and becoming UK citizens. The problem is with this playing catch-up and talking tough on migration is, Kemi, the Overton window shifted much further along than that, my friend. The idea that you can say, well, you're claiming benefits so you can't become a UK citizen. If you're a migrant, you shouldn't even be claiming benefits. That's where we're at now, my friend.
I thought today's announcement was really weak, actually.
So weak.
And the big thing is we want the numbers controlled. Stop the numbers coming in. That's the big thing, not dealing with those that are already here. And so I think it's interesting that she's taken this step, because it was only weeks ago that she was saying she wasn't going to define policies like this. So you can begin to see the party as, if not panicking, certainly worrying. They're making a shift in policy that they weren't planning to do only a very short time ago.
It's very safe.
But it's
Oh,
very
people who aren't claiming benefits can't become UK citizens. That's just a nonsense. That should be the case anyway.
Yeah.
That's not anything that's going to rectify the problems or move the needle or change, you know, the huge sweeping demographic alterations that have happened over the past however many decades. This is just fiddling around the edges and, frankly, the sort of thing that people think that should have been the case for ages now. The same with this idea that, you know, you can only claim citizenship after 10 years rather than 5.
Yeah.
I think most people think that, I think in Switzerland actually, you can't buy a house in Switzerland unless you've lived and paid into the tax system for about a decade or something. I mean, this is the sort of stuff
I quite like Switzerland.
And they get stuff right, don't they?
They get
I
it done, don't they?
Yeah, they get stuff right. But this is the sort of... They need to be bolder than this. When you look at the sort of rhetoric coming from Rupert Lowe, who says, I don't care what you're going to call me, we need radical immigration policies. We need to kick out migrants who've committed crimes. We need to kick out people who are not paying their way. You know, we've been having conversations with some of the listeners today, and, you know, someone messaged me going, I used to work in Dubai. I used to work in Spain. If I lost my job, I'd have to leave those countries. I couldn't bring dependents, and I had to have my own health insurance.
Well, America's the same. You get a green card, but it's attached to your job, and you lose your job.
You lose your right to be there. Get out, and they try and make sure they enforce it. So why in the UK do we have this system of, well, if you're claiming welfare as a migrant, you can't become a citizen? What is that, Kemi?
Well,
That's rubbish.
We're a very soft-touch country. That's
so soft.
I don't expect you to agree with what I'm about to say, but I'll say it anyway. We need ID cards as well.
I do agree with that.
You do agree
no,
with that?
I agree with
I'm sorry,
that.
in that case, but I think, you know, if people disappear into our country, and we're monitored, unfortunately, in so many ways anyway. By also, so
literally,
having ID cards wouldn't really make any difference.
If you've got a Facebook account, why are you worried about an ID card?
100%.
When, frankly, the problem is, there's a couple of problems, because I am for this. I've said for a long time, it doesn't bother me if I've got an ID card. So when I go to the GP surgery, when I was a resident of Belgium, I had to get my residency card. And I had to have health insurance again. And to get an appointment in Belgium, you have to take your card and you put it into a card reader machine, and they can check whether you're entitled to get healthcare. They can take it off your medical insurance. I broke my ankle in Belgium, falling over on the cobbles.
Goodness gracious. Wasn't it dizzying? The wobbles again, wasn't it?
I was coming out of an EU ball. It was sort of instant karma. I was a bit drunk, and I've been popping all these EU balloons.
It's the EU god was judging you.
Yeah, and I walked out into the cobbles, and
I love the idea of you popping EU balloons.
Yeah, it was a free bar, and I thought, I'm gonna, you know, repatriate some of these membership fees. Anyway, I fell over, snapped my ankle in a bad way.
Dear.
I had to have emergency surgery.
Oh,
I was on a gurney, and they were waiting to get all the forms filled in, signed. Can it be paid for? I was not being wheeled into the theatre to have emergency surgery until they knew I paid. If I couldn't have paid, I don't know what would have happened. I don't think they'd have done the operation. I think they'd have been like, right, you better phone someone rich.
I thought certainly in America they do the surgery and they sort it out later. You know, you don't have to wait for the ambulance to come until they've proved you've got money in your account. But in
this country, you know, we always hear, oh well, you know, this is my problem with the ID card thing, right? Because I think they need to be in place. But will they be given to the right people, and will they be used properly? Because you'll have all the leftist GPs going, I don't want to check ID cards, my job is to treat people. Then you'll basically have someone, you know, coming over from Calais on a boat, and the first thing they'll be bloody given is an ID card. Apologies for not allowed to say that word Ofcom, just getting a bit angry about this. But they'll just be issued with them. And then you've got that former mullet-wearing moron Blair, who, what did he mean when he turned round and he said, I think we should have ID cards to prevent populism. What did he mean by that?
Well, I suppose if he meant that immigration was under control via ID cards, maybe you wouldn't get some of the fiery extremes.
But they'll just give the migrants ID cards.
But sure, they would, because everyone needs an ID card, but on that ID card would be your status.
Right.
So if you had absconded, for example, from a process, well, your ID card would record that fact. So when a police officer or whoever took your ID card, that would be evident. If you didn't have an ID card, the presumption would be that you'd thrown it away.
There is so much reform that needs to be done, root and branch, in our public services and public-facing institutions. If you look at the statistics of crime by nationality, for the past 10 years, the police force have just decided they're not going to record this data anymore.
Well,
Why?
That happens in the States a lot. So, for example, there's an awful lot of evidence that marriage is incredibly good for children and families. But so they stop recording the data because there's a whole set of beliefs in our establishment. They don't want those beliefs reinforced, so they stop collecting the data.
Right.
It's criminal, actually.
Yeah.
Criminal.
It's like, if the data is going to be upsetting to the public, it's best that we don't have it in the
It's
first
not upsetting
place.
to the public. The public would be happy about it. It's upsetting to the bureaucrats. That's the problem, yeah.
But it's absolutely shocking. And so this is the thing. Yes to ID cards. That's my personal opinion.
Yep.
Do you know what? Knowing Nigel like I know, Nigel's sort of a natural libertarian, really, at heart. So I don't know if he would go for that.
There certainly would be a lot of Reform members, I don't think, who would like it.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of sort
Here's
of...
one who does like it.
Yeah, well, you know, here's somebody who agrees, because I just think when you've trashed, culturally vandalised the country as much as you have, when you've got a huge amount of crime, and now it's just being wantonly done by foreign gangs. So I was reading a story today. Finally, they're cracking down on mobile phone thefts. 50 million quid's worth in London. Again, most of the people... It's 50 million quid's worth of phone thefts in London or something.
What period of time does that cover? Do you know?
I don't know. Fugue states flu. I don't know. But they've decided they're going to crack down on phone crime, and the Met Police have got this Operation Whatnot to try and do it and recover phones. They've gone after this particular gang that they've managed to find is sort of, committing a lot of these crimes, the kids on the electric bikes, who largely target women. Again, I'm not being Me Too movement, but they do. If you're a woman walking by yourself, you're more likely to be a victim of this sort of crime because you're considered less likely to fight back. Anyway, I was reading this story about this particular gang who's been apprehended. Every single name, none of them were John Smith. No. None of them were, Robert Bates. Every single name read like, did you come to this country to commit this crime? Yeah. And that's what's going on here.
Like the name of a Southport killer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when you look at shoplifting, people don't understand a lot of shoplifting is being done by Central and Eastern European gangs who are taking steaks and bottles of wine off the, shelves of grocery stores, putting them in vans and driving them out to Bulgaria to furnish their brand new restaurants they're building for their crime lords over there.
100%, yeah. No, so organised crime is the big thing we haven't got control of. Yeah. Lots of progress has been made about burglary and car crime, for example, but organised crime and basic antisocial behaviour. Right. Those are the two things really are out of control.
But the vast majority of organised crime, you can look at this. There's this website I absolutely love called the Organised Crime Index. Google it. You get this website. It's sort of the contributors to this website are people like the CIA and Interpol and Europol. And you've got all this data, and you can go country by country and have a look at the profile of organised crime in that particular country. And it's a fascinating read. You go on to the UK, and it says the vast majority of organised crime is being consolidated now by Albanian gangs. So how are these Albanians just getting off aeroplanes in this country without checks? What are you doing here? Are you coming to be a doctor? No, get out.
A friend of mine has just gone to Greece, doing some voluntary work in Greece. He passed through Albania in his car, with a British passport. Do you know how many times he was stopped by the police in registered vehicles and basically said, if you want to carry on, you need to give us some cash? 5 times.
Wow.
5 times. Albania, unfortunately, is a criminal state.
Yeah.
And importing people from that country would just ask you for trouble.
Why can't you just have one? This is not like... I'm sure there are lots of... There's a lovely young Albanian guy who used to work here, actually. Yeah. And he said to me, Alex, you always talk about the Albanians. I'm Albanian. We're actually really good people. And I'm like, I'm sure there are plenty of really good people. Of course. But, the data shows that a vast majority of our organised crime is being done by Albanian gangs. And I'm sorry, that should be enough for us to say, until this gets sorted out, I'm afraid we can't be soft touch on this. Changes have to be made to who can come into the country.
And being as strict as that would be good for your Albanian friend and for his society, because so long as the rest of the world indulges, his country is going to continue to be as bad as it is.
Beautiful beaches there by the looks of things. I want Albania to sort of pull its socks up and do well. It looks like it'd be a great resort holiday.
You can take your socks off and go there.
Great resort destination like Gaza on the Med. Anyway, we could talk about that, but we have unfortunately run out of time. Tim, I hope your dizziness gets better.
Well, I hope your wobbliness gets better. Yeah.
Solidarity is all I can say. I'll check in with you.
Yeah.
Blimey. Right. We're going to take a short break now. We're going to sit with our head between our knees, take a few deep breaths. But after that, it's your turn to get in touch and throw in your 2 bits. 03444 99 1000 is the number to call if you want to be patched through to the studio and give me a little bit of respite from talking. You can send me a voice note on WhatsApp to that number, or indeed a WhatsApp message. 8722 is the number to text. Put talk before your text. We're on X at talkTV. Back after this.
I mean, at least they're going to be arresting somebody. And the number of people I know, when their phone was stolen, they report to the police, and you get the, here's a crime number, oh, here's a note from victim support. That's it. They don't even do anything about it. They go, well, I can trace my phone to where it is. People to be able to trace their... They've literally watched people load their bike along with other people's bikes, things into a van with got the licence plate, videoed the people doing it, not tackled them because it's a large bunch of men, and obviously calling the police at the time. Police doing absolutely nothing, just routinely doing nothing. So, I mean, they just want a bit of a nice headline, and we're supposed to go, oh, police crackdown, wonderful.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back. Right, it's my favourite bit of the show, because it's a bit of the show where you take control of the airways and give me a little bit of a break. So shall we hand the floor over to David, who's in Exeter. Hi, David.
I was loving listening to you and Monty just a minute ago talking about Kemi's approach to policy, or the void thereof, because she was more or less mirroring really with that how Starmer was behaving with this, where he was in opposition, where there was no critique of the Tories. They didn't develop any policy, and then they came into government, and we've seen them, flapping around like a stranded fish. But I think that the biggest thing really on challenging Kemi on this, as well as Nigel and the leadership there at Reform, is it's got to be policy, policy, policy. And this is the reason the Trump administration has come in America. They've told everyone what their policy is, and people have gone, yeah, we're out, we'll vote for that. So whilst Reform are leading at the moment, and they've got a good gain in the polls, now is the time where coherent policy has got to be brought forth.
Do you think Kemi's going far enough, though? Because she's clearly suggesting a couple of policies here. One, that they're going to kick out jobless and low-paid migrants, going to be barring them from settling indefinitely. Same, actually, is essentially this. They're not going to be allowed to be UK citizens. But why should migrants be getting benefits anyway?
Well, I think you've got to take perhaps look at it at the big end, you know, and I've discussed this with Anne Widdecombe numerous times, is that, you know, immigration and migration in this country used to be in the context of 30 or 40,000 a year, give or take. With the open border policy that Blair adopted, you know, we've seen volumes of that going up to 800,000-900,000 a year, and it's probably possible that during the Starmer administration we're going to see 3 or 4 million more people come into the country. We're not dealing with immigration, we're dealing with population replacement. It's a completely different context. So for Kemi to start talking about, oh, well, you know, we're not going to have this little tiny molecule of policy here to do with taking something off someone with benefits, it's absolutely irrelevant because the numbers are just astronomical. So she's just literally, I mean, it just isn't coherent. I think the general public will go, what are you talking about?
I mean, so we've got something from YouGov here, right? YouGov has done a bit of an opinion poll on this policy announcement, and apparently Britons tend to support Kemi Badenoch's proposals to increase the length of time that migrants have to live in the UK before they're entitled to stay or can become citizens. 50% support, opposes 29%. But, I mean, I suppose you might welcome that particular policy, but is she going far enough? I mean, I was just speaking to Monty earlier. We're both sort of in agreement that the Overton window has now shifted much further. The Tories are trying to play catch-up on immigration, but guess what? The rest of the population is one step further ahead than that.
Yes, it is. I think you're completely correct. The Overton window now, we're talking about 4 million, give or take, 4 million more people coming into the country under the open door policy. And I don't see anything at the moment that suggests that Starmer is going to restrict or throttle that down to any kind of coherent numbers that, you know, our infrastructure and services can actually cope with. So that's the context of the conversation to the public is, you know, are you in favour of retaining the open door policy? And we're going to have, you know, I don't know what the numbers are specifically at the moment. Let's say, you know, 10 million more people. I think Rupert Lowe's been discussing this. You know, there's 10 million more people than have come in since the sort of open door policy between Blair and the Tories. But if you're going to say now there's another 3, 4, 5 million on top of that, 15 million more people in total, that's the context of the bigger policy. You know, hang on a minute. Nobody's voted for this at any point. Nobody's had any kind of consultation with the public. This is not a question of anything other than consent.
And yet it's been constantly in manifestos, hasn't it? We're going to bring down immigration when they've done the opposite. That is the problem.
Well, total lie. It's an absolute lie. It's a travesty. And this is why people are disenfranchised. You know, it's a sure sign of socialism. You know, disenfranchise the electorate. It's a sure sign of socialism. But this is where the context of the policy has got to come from. You know, we are going to shut the border and we're going to shut it really quickly and we're going to go back to some coherent immigration policy.
It's interesting, you know, so the bold stuff that Trump is doing, I look at new executive orders every day and I think the British people must be green with envy. But we're still a long way from an election. That is the issue we face. David and Exeter, thank you ever so much. Let's speak now to Jason, who isn't in the southwest. Our first caller who's not from the southwest. He's in Sheffield. Hi, Jason.
Yeah, I'm not in southwest. I'm in Yorkshire. Good
Lovely Yorkshire. Good old Yorkshire. Full of very sensible people up there. How you doing?
Well, yeah, I'm all right. Sometimes it's full of sensible people, but there you go.
As spoken by a true Yorkshireman.
Yeah, well, I'm not a Yorkshireman. I come from a part of the country.
Ah.
It's the thing is with this Chagos Islands thing.
Right.
They've given it away and paid to give it away because in Rewind 24 Hours, in PMQs, he said it was a matter of national security.
Yeah, apparently, Harry Cole was basically saying it's all to do with listening and satellites and something or the other. But, you know, Harry Cole and I both agreed it was sort of guidance from the UN. It's not an actual ruling. We can just go no.
Well, the thing is, why if it's an issue of national security, why would you give it away,
Right.
pay someone, and then lease it back for If it's national security, why would you lease it back and stay the same as you were, pretty much?
Right. Yeah, do you know what? None of it makes sense to me, Jason. It's like sometimes I think the only explanation is that man in number 10 would rather be working for Beijing or some sort of, secret cabal of global socialists rather than for Britain. I can't understand otherwise what on earth he thinks he's doing. It does seem to me, though, that Marco Rubio and Donald Trump might well pull the rug from under his feet and say, right, you want to do that? Tariffs are coming your way. But let's see. I don't know. He doesn't seem to be a man who backs down. He doesn't seem to be a man who goes, I've got something wrong, I'm going to now do a volte-face. So let's see what happens. I think this one's going to create as much of a headache for Sir Keir Starmer as I've got right now. Jason in Sheffield, thank you ever so much for your call. Right, I've got a brilliant guest coming up after the break. An amazing headmistress, you know her, Catherine Birbalsingh, founder and head teacher of the Michaela Community School, because I tell you what, she is not a fan of Bridget Phillipson, the Education Secretary. She's accused Bridget of being a Marxist who hates academy schools. Let's have a fiery chat about that after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back to the show. Now, I'm joined by a brilliant woman, Catherine Birbalsingh, head of the Michaela Community School in Wembley, probably the best headmistress in all of the country. Did you know that when you look at the grades and compare the grades of Eton with the grades of the Michaela Community School, an academy which doesn't have any sort of selection process like a J4 at 11 plus, and it doesn't get people to pay fees, they're pretty much level pegging. The school has been rated as outstanding by Ofsted. Well, you would think then, wouldn't you, if Catherine goes and sits with the Education Secretary to say, look, this is how I've done it. This is how we can improve education in this country, that Bridget Phillipson would be all ears. But Catherine, she wasn't, was she?
No, well, what's interesting, my deputy went with me and he was explaining about us matching Eton's 9s in their GCSEs last year. And of course, we have a non-selective intake in inner city Wembley. And she didn't say, gosh, that's amazing. So tell me the top 3 things that you think you do differently that's made it so that you've had such amazing results. Or, you know, tell me about your culture. Tell me about the discipline. Tell me about the teaching methods. She just didn't care. And I asked her if she'd visited any top schools. where she might learn from their methods and what they're doing. She wasn't able to name a school. She said the schools were a matter of public record that she visited. And I said, well, why don't you just tell us? But she wouldn't. And I presume it's because she hasn't visited any of the top schools. And then, well, I asked her a whole variety of questions about parts of her bill. And she really couldn't give any answers that were satisfactory. Because she's trying to take the freedoms away from academies that allow us to be so successful. And she is, I think, pretending to like academies because it's very difficult to argue against them because they have done such a good job in the last decade and a half. Internationally, we now perform on league tables. England does very well in comparison to what we used to do, moving from 27th to 7th, and we're top in reading across the Western world. So, and that's all thanks to the last 15 years. And yet she wants to destroy the freedoms that academies have and take them back and put them back in the centralized state. And obviously school leaders, I think, like myself, we know what's best for our intakes and what we should do for them. And I think we should be allowed to make those decisions and that she should not be making those decisions for us.
Right. What do you think your recipe for success is? What is it, the sort of thing that you're doing? Because like you said, you've got a really diverse school community in a city area. Normally, your sort of student body would be the type who wouldn't do very well, that you'd have a lot of problems with lesson disruption, perhaps, inattentiveness, in attendance, poor grades. But you have the opposite. So what is it that you're doing that other schools are not?
Well, I mean, there are other top schools, obviously, that are doing similar sorts of things. We have really excellent behavior. I'm known as the strictest headmistress. And we love them enough to be strict and to hold our standards very high for them. We do that by having a uniform. This is one thing that Bridget Phillipson will take away from academies, saying one cannot have more than 3 branded items. Now, all of the top schools have at least 5 to 6 branded items. There's a reason for that, and it's because if you want to turn around a difficult school, you do so starting with uniform in the same way as New York was turned around in the 1980s and 90s by removing the graffiti off the subways. This is broken windows theory. I mean, it'd take me a long time to go into it, but you need branded items in your uniform. And it gives the children a sense of belonging, like the England players that go out to play, they wear the same shirt. There's a real pride in their school. And if you come to Michaela, you will see the pride that they have in attending Michaela. But that's something Bridget Phillipson will destroy. We also have the opportunity to tailor our curriculum according to the various challenges we might have. Staffing challenges are different in inner-city Wembley than they are in the Lake District, than they are in Hull. And we should be able, I'm the school leader, I know what's happening, and I think I know it's happening more for my children than Bridget Phillipson does. But she is wanting to change all of this. We have recruitment as a problem in education. Well, it's always a problem, I have to say. And it's something that any education secretary should address. She is actually closing one route for teachers to come into teaching. And this is because she wants the bureaucratic stamp of a certificate. And I would say one of the questions she asked me at the end of the meeting, which I think she genuinely wanted to know the answer for, was, why do you continuously call me a Marxist? And I said, because everything you say has a Marxist tinge to it. You know, she wants to centralize it into the state. We only have a few freedoms as academy leaders. So we have very few freedoms. And the fact that she wants to centralize, so she wants to centralize the uniform thing, she's going to prevent us from doing that. Then there's the curriculum. She's saying, right, you're all going to have to follow the national curriculum, but she hasn't decided what the national curriculum is yet. So in a few weeks or months, she's reviewing it now, and then she and her people are going to come out with it. But right now, they're putting a bill through that's going to force us all to adhere to a national curriculum that we don't even know. Right. And when I think about the bureaucracy that's going to be caused by all of this, the amount of resource making that teachers are going to, the workload that she is creating, she's also got a system, PAN, so the pupil admissions numbers into schools. She wants to give that to the local authority so that, for instance, we're a good school, we have 120 places. If the local school down the road also has 120 places, but they've only got 100 kids, oh, well, the local authority can come and take 20 of our kids and they're going to put them over there. And so they'll reduce our PAN to 100, for instance. So there'll be 20 fewer places in the good school, than there will be in the other school. And I said to her, but what if a mother were to say to you, I'm desperate to get my child into that good school, but you've reduced the number of places in that good school? She had no answer for me.
Why is it they seem to hate success? I've never understood this, because there are parts of, especially, you know, the left wing of politics who, for some reason, take issue with you. And I think that at the end of the day, your kids are happy. They're achieving brilliantly. You're setting them up for incredible futures. That should be the most important thing. What on earth is possibly controversial about that? And it seems to me there's this hatred of success, and there's this hatred at the root of it all against toughness, against discipline, against doing things pragmatically instead of sort of softly and loosely.
Yes. Well, I mean, and that's only some of them. I have to say that there are a whole load of school leaders who are very much opposed to what Bridget Phillipson is doing and this bill. And some of them have spoken out. Some of them are a bit more frightened because they don't feel they can, and they're worried about the trustees and the governors, and they don't want to bring their school into disrepute. You know, I'm a lot more cavalier and I go out there and say things. I feel for the school leaders because they don't want this. They don't want it any more than I do. So they're all doing different things. That's the other thing, is that all the schools aren't the same. She wants to make everything uniform and exactly the same across the country, which is ridiculous, because some schools might be able to be specialists in real science and other schools specialists in maths. She's also cut the Latin for Excellence program. This was a program that allowed state school kids to study Latin and gave deprived schools up in the north money to hire Latin teachers. Now, I say this as a head teacher who does not offer Latin, so I have no dog in this fight. But I know that there are schools out there that had this money and now it's been taken from them. There's also the Maths Advanced program that during its existence has got 50% more kids doing A-level maths, as well as training up maths teachers for our classrooms. She's pulled half their funding. So we're going to have fewer maths teachers in our classrooms. I mean, I don't understand any of that at all. I just don't get it. I don't get why anyone would do this. When I asked her, she blamed the previous government. But the previous government are not the ones, I just don't get it.
It seems to me that, that the left always want this homogeny, don't they? That it's not fair that some pupils do well and other pupils don't do well. It's not fair to have any sort of selective education. It's not fair that some people get A's and other people get D's. And I think, well, do you know what? Life is not fair at the root of things. And I agree with you. I think that discipline is so important. I went to 2 great state schools in Gloucester, both were grammar schools, but we had to stand up when the teacher came into the classroom. We had to have a very strict uniform. If your skirt was too short, you were sent home. The shirts always had to be tucked in. I know that you have a policy of, kids straight away have to learn to walk single file in the corridor to lessons. We had the same. We also had a system at one of the grammar schools I went to with prefects and observators, where certain pupils in the 6th form were chosen to be people who could hand out and monitor detentions, and it was taken very seriously. And this idea of sort of discipline just ran through the entire DNA of my school. And again, it was a state school that had superb results. It sent so many of the pupils to Oxbridge and to Russell Group universities. So this works.
It does. It does work. And, they stand for me at assembly. And then people say things like, well, she's obviously just self-obsessed. She wants the kids to stand for her. As if, look, it's a ritual. It's something that teaches the children respect. They belong to their school. Their headmistress is at the top of the school. They stand for her. And then I give them an assembly. And isn't that lovely? We sing God Save the King. We have our British flag outside. We are all British together, despite the fact that we come from all these different racial and religious backgrounds. And we get on in our lovely multicultural school that is very successful, where we get great grades at GCSE. We're also kind and decent people who look after each other. And it's one of the things that we get 800 visitors every year, and your listeners are welcome to go online and sign up to our website for a visit to the school, and you'll come and see really happy and joyful children who are learning lots. Yes, I don't know why anybody would have a problem with this. I've invited Bridget now 3 times to come and see the school. I hope that she accepts. I'm not sure, maybe since this letter she might not want to accept, but I'm hoping that she will, because honestly, she would learn so much if she were to not just visit us, but to visit a whole variety of the top schools out there and to ask us how we do it instead of telling us that she knows better than we do.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think she will be taking you up on your offer. But, you know, I think you're doing all the right things. You are adored by so many people who wish you were the headmaster of every school. If only Catherine Burblesing could be cloned. Catherine, thank you ever so much, founder and head teacher of the Michaela Community School. How worrying is it that we've got an education secretary who I think, you know, Catherine's right. She just seems more driven by this sort of principle, this Marxist principle that everything's got to be homogenised under the control of the state. It reminds me when I studied hard times at sixth form. And Professor Gradgrind, I think, was the name of the school teacher there. And it was a Dickensian commentary on, again, this sort of utilitarianism, this socialist ethos that was governing schools, churning out many pianoforte legs, you know, getting all these people off the production line, stifling creativity, not pushing for excellence. The left wing hates this idea that some people do better than others. In fact, they want to hold back people with talent and ability and drive and creativity. I've got this theory that a lot of people on the left themselves were low achievers or bullied at school. And they've got a sort of bee in their bonnet. They've got a hatred. They've got a bitterness to anyone in society who seems to be doing well. Rather than look at them, celebrate them, applaud them, emulate them, follow in their footsteps, they just want to bring people down who are doing a good job because they're not. It's jealousy, politics of envy, like Margaret Thatcher said. Right, going to take a short break now. After the break, I'd love it if you got in touch with me. 0344 499 1000, the number to dial if you want to be patched through to the studio and have your moment on the airwaves. I'm looking forward to giving it to you. I must admit, this flu, I'm beginning to feel a bit sort of, you know, muzzy-headed. Beginning to get tough for young old Alex in this studio. Young old? See, the flu is getting to me. So please do give me a call. Give me some respite from talking for a moment. That would be wonderful. 0344 499 1000, number to call. You can use that number to send me a WhatsApp message or leave me a voice note. I'd love a voice note as well, because then someone can just hit a button and play it out, and I can just sort of have a little micro sleep in the process. 8722 is the number to text. Put talk before your message, or we're on X at talkTV. It's your turn after this.
This woman is sitting in prison for the rest of her life until she dies on the basis of what is increasingly shown to be an inadequate and unfair trial. And if the courts can't put that right, then what are they for? I think the Chief Counsel Cheshire Police and a number of newspaper outlets who continue to treat Lucy Letby as if she's definitely guilty really do need to wake up to the fact that this press conference and the transcript of it, which is available, and the documents which were produced at it, show that this case simply does not stand up.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back. Right, as promised, it's your opportunity to get in touch and let me know what you think about anything we've been talking about today. Let's start off with Laura Jane, who's in Hampshire. Hi, Laura Jane.
Isn't Badenoch's statement reminiscent of stop the boats, smash the gangs? None of this is relevant to the real problem. It's just complete sloganism and a slight air of panic to it for all the obvious reasons. But really, nothing has changed. They haven't learned anything. And if tomorrow they were in power, we know exactly what would happen. None of this would be implemented. And actually, at the end of the day, if there is a good citizen who's, doing well for him or herself, and why would we then not want them to be a citizen after 5 years? It's not going to change anything. It's not that sort of person we're trying to stop. We're trying to stop illegal people, feeding off the state and effectively affecting our taxes.
I mean, we need to stop illegals coming in. But when you think about people who've come here illegally, I mean, we always focus on the boats, don't we? But actually, I dare say there's a lot more people who are overstaying their welcome, who had student visas or fake student visas, who, didn't get on a dinghy and got in. He might have come in on the back of a lorry, might have come in through an airport. Like I said, might have outstayed their welcome.
We're not going to be offering them citizenship. Why would we, a young student who's just graduated or whatever, we're looking for citizens in a different sort of area, whether it be doctors or that. To me, it's just a whole load of nonsense. It doesn't address the real problem. And you're right, it's not just about those who come over on the boat. It's illegal immigrants, however they get in, illegal, black, under the radar, etc., etc. And those statements do not address those issues.
I mean, what about legal migration, though? Because she seems to be targeting that, the area which one assumes you could target. Although the amount of times I pick up a newspaper and read about someone who came here legally on a student visa and then just didn't go home and then applied for asylum or this, that and the other. But even when you look at legal migration, at one point it was grossing 1 million people a year. I mean, that's bonkers. That's not sustainable, is it?
No, it's not. By the way, I have one piece of advice for you, and I'm not a doctor. Look up vestibular neuritis.
Yeah.
That's what you've got. I have had it since 2018, and it's a problem.
Oh, I don't want it that long. Please tell me it's going to go away. I can't live like this. It's horrible.
Friends who had it, but sorry, I'm going to say it. Post-vaccination, they had it for about 2 weeks afterwards. I can count. I mean, literally, I've run out of fingers counting the amount of people who've had vestibular problems, and all of them. But anyway, that's another topic. But do look it up and take ginger nuts to work.
Ginger nuts, okay, is that the secret? I need some ginger nuts right now, I'm telling you. The studio is flying around, honestly.
You have my sympathy. You have my sympathy.
Oh, thank you, Laura Jane. It's not nice, believe me.
No, it is not.
Well, fingers crossed it will go away. That's all I can hope and pray for. Laura Jane in Hampshire, thank you ever so much. Let's speak now to Jill, who's in Cornwall. Hi, Jill.
How are you? All right?
Well, I've been better.
I was just listening to the treatment that they could be offering you, but there you go. Unfortunately, you never get what you should get, and It's the same with the Conservatives and everything else. I'm so sick of it. I'm so sick of hearing people telephone in, speak to you, email in, whatever. There's so much sensible people, so many sensible people out there with answers to the problems that we have, and yet we're stuck with a government that doesn't know its arm from its hand. We're stuck with a leader that needs vocal coaching before he can speak to us, for God's sake. I'm just sick of it. I'm sick of it. I'm female, and I should. If everything goes as they tell us it should go, I should back Kimmy Badenoch because she's female and she's a leader and all the rest of it. But I don't think she's right for the party. And
Do you think the problem is here? Something's gone on in politics, hasn't it? That the change makers, the brightest and the best, the innovators, the leaders, the true talent in this country go into the private sector, or they move to America and work in Silicon Valley. They're not standing in politics.
Well, politics is not working, is it? It's not working. And what I'm so peed off about, I'm sorry, I've brought that down as clean as I can. What I'm so fed up with is the fact that you've got people within the realms of the Conservative Party and people within the Reform group that are really intelligent, say the right things. Why can't the Conservatives, if they really care about the people of this country and the country itself, then you would think that they would be happy to bring the parties together and form a group that everyone in the country can support. Because at the moment,
But this is the problem. You kind of feel, don't you, that whenever a politician opens their mouth, it's all about politicking. They want to point score. They want to sort of outdo the opposition. It's not about what's best for the country. There's not enough cross-party support for things. There's not enough issues which bring together the opposite floors of the House. They disagree for the sake of disagreeing. It's the same during COVID. I got the impression that, you know, we need to lock down more, we need to do this more. It was more about trying to score a point with the people who were in the government at the time than what was best for the country. And I'm fed up with that. I think a lot of this comes from two-party politics, where the obsession is constantly on winning, on beating the other people, and the focus is taken away from what are we doing to the country? Why aren't we listening to the people?
Exactly, and we've got a situation now where we have another government in that has made it impossible to speak your mind. I can't say that I dislike something because someone will call me some historism. I can't be critical of someone because they will call me racist or whitish or whatever. We're getting to the point where we can't have an opinion other than what we're being told we can think. And unfortunately, if everyone falls in line with that thinking, then we are going to end up in a situation where we've got a load of people living in the country that are following advice that is not good for anyone at all.
Jill, I couldn't agree more. I share your sentiments. Jill in Cornwall, they're speaking some common sense. Why can't politicians do the same? I hear you cry. Right, I'm going to take a short break now. 1 more hour of the show to go, so don't go anywhere. I'll do my best to keep you company. I'll see you just after this.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, hello there, Alex Phillips here with you for one more hour, through till 7 o'clock, when my old colleague, Mr. Kevin O'Sullivan, will be taking the reins and steering the good ship Talk Radio until 10 o'clock this evening. He doesn't get to go out and party much, does he, poor old Kev? A bit of a lifestyle change for him, one assumes. Right, well, let's get back to the big political story of the day, which is the fact that Kemi Badenoch has woken up and suddenly realised that her tactic of not announcing policies just wasn't really working. She better come up with something. People need to know what the Conservatives stand for if they're going to begin to make a dent in, well, the great overtaking of Reform UK, who are now 10 points in the polls ahead of the Conservative Party. Who would have thunk that could have happened about 6 months ago? Well, there's been a bit of a rude awakening for the relatively new Conservative Party leader. And she's come out swinging. Or so she thinks. She has said she's going to ban migrants who claim benefits from becoming UK citizens. She says the period before migrants can claim indefinite leave to remain should be doubled from 5 years to 10, and people have to show they're earning enough to support themselves. I'm joined now by Henry Smith, a former Conservative MP. He was in favour of the Rwanda policy. Is he in favour of this policy? Henry, does this go far enough?
Hello, good evening, Alex. I do welcome this policy. I think it's very important that we fight against this pull factor of the benefit system that encourages so many migrants to come over here. If we're going to have migration to this country, it should be people who are skilled, people who are going to be contributing to our economy, and just letting people come here, be on benefits for years and years, and then have the privilege of British citizenship at the end of that is just plain wrong. So we do need to make sure that those people who are coming to this country are productive and contributing members of society, and we need to dismantle this sort of welfare state that is attracting so much of migration to this country and is unsustainable and unfair for UK taxpayers.
But do you think this goes far enough, though? Because everything you're saying, it seems like the better policy would be to say to migrants, if you lose your job, I'm afraid you've got to go home, a bit like the American green card system. Not just, well, if you're claiming benefits, you can't become a citizen. Surely, if you're from a different country and you come here and you're not working and you're not paying into our economy through taxation or through, industry, then you should be told, well, thanks for your contribution. Here's a plane ticket. Goodbye.
Well, I agree, Alex. I think that's right. Whilst I welcome these measures announced by the Conservative leader, Kemi Badenoch, today to mitigate against the attractiveness of migrating to this country just for benefits, I do think we need to go a lot further. And I think if you aren't able to positively contribute to the economy and at least be able to support yourself, then you shouldn't have a right to be resident in this country. Certainly shouldn't have indefinite leave to remain, as far too many people do.
Why do you think she hasn't gone that far then? Why has she not gone that far? Why has she sort of tinkered around the edges and said, well, you can't just claim benefits and then ask to be a proper citizen? Why hasn't she sort of said what we both agree on, which seems to be the more sensible policy, is if you've come here from another country, your visa's going to be tied to your work status? Why has she not gone there?
Well, I'd like to see the Conservative Party go further and also announce that it would be policy to leave the European Court on Human Rights, which prevents so many people at the moment who shouldn't be here, dangerous criminals, terrorists and others from being deported. So I certainly want to see the Conservative Party go a lot further in terms of addressing the unsustainable levels of illegal migration. My understanding, this is a response to a piece of Labour government legislation that they are bringing forward, which will actually make it easier for migrants to come to this country and much more difficult to deport migrants who, for example, have got themselves into criminality. So I think this is a good start, but I'd want to see much more robust policies coming forward.
Let's talk about the fact that Labour have spent £11.6 million on deportation flights in the first 6 months of being in power. It seems to me they are beginning to get people out of the country who shouldn't be here. Seemingly, they don't seem to have too many constraints with the ECHR. Were the Conservatives able to do the same when you were an MP?
Well, there have always been deportations, but the level of deportations is incredibly small compared with the amount of net migration that we are seeing. And the number of deportations of people who are serious offenders, people who have engaged in criminality is still far too low. And the time it takes for people to be deported, because largely the European Convention on Human Rights, the European Court that administers that, means that people can sort of jam up the appeal system and it takes a long time to be deported. Often, a lot of these deportation flights are where those migrants have agreed of their own accord to be repatriated to their countries of origin. We need a far more robust system. £11.5 million sounds a lot for flights, but actually that doesn't amount to very many people. We need to be deporting hundreds of thousands of people who shouldn't be in this country, who have entered illegally or have come here and have engaged in criminality. We need to be going a lot further than we currently are. And unfortunately, the current Labour government are making it easier for migrants to stay here and easier for migrants to get here in the first place. And that is totally the wrong direction of travel and actually flies in the face of what the vast majority of the British people want to see.
Yeah, the problem is, though, the Labour Party are dining out on saying, look at all the damage you did when you were in government about the Conservative Party, and everyone who seems to call into this show shares that viewpoint, that so much damage was done. When you look at the record levels of legal migration, the fact that the Rwanda plan never took off, figuratively and literally, and the Labour Party, I'm not exactly going to shower praise on them, but they do actually seem to be doing a slightly better job.
Well, I'd have issue with you there that the Labour Party are doing a better job. We've seen illegal entry into this country over the last 7 months since they've been in office increase significantly. So I do think the figures, unfortunately, are going in the wrong direction. But I perfectly take the point, and I agree with you, that the last Conservative government, didn't do nearly enough that it should have done to mitigate against migration. We should have been far more robust on that. We should have been far stronger in terms of enacting those policies. And one of the things I regret, and one of the reasons why I didn't seek re-election as Member of Parliament for the Conservatives, is because we squandered an 80-seat majority where we could have done so much to tighten our borders and, for what it's worth, deliver on the freedoms that Brexit gave us as well. So I know we had a global pandemic, but even so, we could have done so much more, and we didn't take that opportunity. There were far too many unforced errors, and as a result, the British people have now a Labour government that is much more pro-migrant, and we have unsustainable figures coming into this country that's putting untold pressure on things like housing and public services.
Perhaps, therefore, you might be tempted to vote for reform in the next election.
I think we need a set of policies that is reflecting the real deep-seated concerns and genuine concerns of the British people. These aren't far-right views. These are legitimate concerns that people are worried about. Being able to have a doctor's appointment in a timely manner. People are worried about overcrowding in the classroom for their children or their grandchildren. People are worried about our countryside in a small island being increasingly built on to house people who have come to this country rather than some organic growth in our population, as used to be the case. And I think that any party who is deserving of government should be articulating policies that make sure our borders are much more robust. I look over the water, over the pond to the United States with envy now with the new Trump administration on many aspects. They are really now getting to grips with these problems that matter to the American people. I just wish we had a government that would do that here in Britain. And I think any party, whether that's Conservative Reform or any other party, that advocates robust border policies and migration that works for this country and means this country isn't being taken advantage of and being taken for a ride, which we are at the moment. If a party advocates those policies, then they're deserving of people's votes.
Henry, it's been fantastic catching up with you. I see that he didn't dodge the question there, whether he might vote for reform next time around. A former Conservative MP there may be thinking that his party is done for. Certainly the polling seems to be pointing in that direction. Let's speak now to Chris, who's in Epsom. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Alex. Nice to see you back on the screen. I'm feeling a bit better.
Oh, well, I was. I tell you, I'm struggling now. But fighting on, doing my best.
I'm ready. You better be ready with your tinfoil hat, 'cause I'm going to join some dots for you.
Here we go. Oh, there it is. It's on.
Okay. Migration, this is a complete reset. You've got to look at the amount of immigration that Richie allowed in. I think it was 900,000 net in the end, in the last year he was here. Where did he come from? He came from Goldman Sachs. What does Goldman Sachs do? Goldman Sachs is the banker for Klaus Schwab. What did Keir Starmer say when he was questioned, after he had a very easy time with Matrix? She gave him a very easy interview, and then she said, let's do some quick-fire questions. And the third question she fired at him was, Westminster or Davos? And he went, Davos. Mm-hmm. And then you saw his face change. You can look it up online. You can see his face change.
I know exactly the clip you're talking about there. It seems to me what you're implying is too many of our politicians seem to be delegating decision-making to business leaders and banks and industrialists and CEOs of big multinational companies who want lots of immigration and open borders and all these other things that make them a lot of money. I mean, certainly the sort of global socialists of this world seems to have monetised their project fairly efficiently. And you seem to be pointing out that when it comes to Starmer and when it comes to Sunak, that they are cut from that cloth.
Yeah, and let me join the dots here a bit. The EU is issuing ID cards that carry full biometrics, and Ursula von der Leyen has already said that they're considering putting a carbon credit on their ID card, so that you'll get one flight a year, or about X amount of petrol you're allowed to buy because of the climate. Now, you've got ID cards being mentioned here. It's been mentioned for years by Blair. And what did Blair say the other day?
He wants ID cards to push back against populism. You're worried it's going to be a bit of a Chinese social credit system, it seems, where these things are sort of made to enforce morality and buying the right things and living the right way, or, you know, heaven forfend, you will be punished if you do not comply.
Well, look at the new legislation that Starmer's pushing through. Starmer's pushing through the legislation that anybody on benefits, they can access your bank account and remove funds. Now, benefits. Everybody thinks, oh, that's somebody that's not working, somebody that's fiddling. But hang on a minute. Benefits, that's childcare, child support, carers allowance, tax credits. They're all classified as benefits. That means they would have access to 99% of the population's bank accounts.
Oh, you
we're
know,
heading to a dystopian future.
Chris, maybe we're already living in the dystopian future. That's sometimes my concern. Chris, thank you ever so much for your call, my darling. It's a fascinating conversation. Certainly there is some merits to the argument that perhaps so-called industrialists and people who go to the World Economic Forum have far too much control and far too little accountability. I think that's something a lot of people seem to be agreeing with in this day and age. Let's speak to Pete now, who's in Warrington. Hi, Pete.
Hey, how are you doing, Alex?
I've been better, my love. I have been better, but here I am. What do you want to talk about?
Well, I just want to talk about, I spent like 10 years out in Oman, which is right next to, obviously, Dubai.
In the Gulf, yeah?
And so, yeah, in the Gulf. I spent a lot of years with those guys, and they're actually laughing at us. And I just want to say, I spoke to like 4 or 5 ladies out there who I was working with, and I shown them the I can't is it out there in Luton? I can't remember the girls. She was a lovely young lady.
Right.
Anyway, she was talking about the problem out in Luton of Muslim and Islam,
right?
And they were looking at that, and they were absolutely astounded by the amount of tolerance that we're given to these people.
Do you know, it's funny. I've had this said to me before by people in the UAE especially and in Gulf states who say we've done so much to tackle extremism and the Muslim Brotherhood, and then we look at Western nations who are so lily-livered about tackling these issues that we've thrown them out of our Muslim countries, and you have them in your non-Muslim countries, and nobody seems to have the wherewithal or the guts to stand up for Western values. It's ironic, isn't it, that when you look at the Gulf, when you look at places like Dubai and the UAE, it's such a magnet, it's such a draw for people wanting to go there and live freely and make good money because it's a high-trust society. They've got, you know, great policing. You can't really commit crimes over there. You'll really face the long arm of the law if you do. They're nominally Muslim countries, but they seem to have a lot of freedom. You've got so many sort of Instagram influencers going over there partying on yachts. It's hardly like they're being thrown into prison for wearing a bikini. And you do think to yourself, what are they getting right that we are getting so wrong? Right, going to take a short break now, but when I come back after the break, we'll be catching up with Talk International editor Isabel Oakeshott.
He should resign because he's been found out. That's absolutely wretched, right?
She advertises. I can do it on Zoom if you prefer.
Yeah. Yeah. So, look, there's something else going on here, isn't there? Christmas Eve, an absolutely necessary voice coaching session on Christmas Eve. I don't buy it. I just don't buy it. I think Mrs. Starmer needs to have a word with a voice coach.
Yeah, I'm wondering whether or not, her name is Leonie Mellinger, whether or not she's some kind of friend of the Starmers or something.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, welcome back. Without further ado, let's join Isabel Oakeshott, Talk's international editor. Hi, Isabel. Well, you're prodding number 10, aren't you? I've seen your tweet saying, what's all this about, being angry at me, revealing the fact that Sir Keir Starmer made a secret visit to Southport. What are they so upset about?
Well, who knows what they're upset about? I mean, as far as I can see, this is a fairly straightforward story. Keir Starmer has belatedly gone up to Southport. He went up there this morning, where he, as I understand it, held a meeting with the families of some of the victims of the Rudikabana horror. Now, he held that meeting at a sixth form college, hardly the most secretive of places. And in fact, we at Talk were tipped off about it by one of the students there. Naturally, a sixth form college is full of teenagers who have mobile phones, so no surprise that it wasn't too long before word reached me of this visit. And it seemed pretty significant, really. I mean, Starmer has really upset a lot of people in the community, and privately also I know that he has upset many of the relatives just by not appearing to be very engaged with the whole thing. I mean, in the aftermath of that horror last summer, he really spent very little stroke next to no time in Southport, and people in the community were absolutely furious. And I don't think that that fury has really gone away. And that is probably, almost certainly, why Downing Street didn't want this visit to be publicised. I mean, it's fair enough, of course, Prime Minister's movements are never advertised in advance because that could cause serious security issues. And so it's quite reasonable for Number 10 to put a kind of cloak of secrecy around a visit like this until he's safely there. But what is not, as far as I can see, justified is trying to kind of censor reporting of it after the event. You know, by the time we revealed the visit, Starmer was well on his way somewhere else. And I think it is interesting that he went up there. Also understand that he travelled up there by private jet. Again, I don't have a problem with our leaders travelling in style. I think our prime ministers should travel in style. But it's rather different, isn't it, if they're constantly harping on about net zero? And I think it might have been a better look for him to go up there by car or by train in the way that the rest of us would normally.
What I don't understand is normally when they make these visits, it's to make a statement, it's to show solidarity. It is a press call. It's supposed to be there for the optics of it. It's not like he was going up and visiting a sixth form college to hold a lesson. So I don't understand what the motivation for this visit was. Either you're going there to say, I'm in Southport because I care about this issue, because I want to show the people of Britain that we need to put our arms around Southport and learn lessons, and you do that publicly, or you kind of don't bother going. I don't really understand the tactics behind this.
I do find it very strange, I must say. I completely understand the idea of a private meeting. I mean, of course, we all respect that. You know, wouldn't expect journalists to be in on a meeting like that. But if you are going to have a private meeting, then what I don't get, what doesn't stack up, is having it in a school. What's that all about? If you're going to have a private meeting, invite the families down to Downing Street, or invite them to your private country residence, or invite them to some other venue where you're not going to attract attention. But going to a school required a massive kind of security operation. Roads were blocked all around. There were Range Rovers, blocking parking outside. There was clearly a whole song and a dance going on. And under those circumstances, how is it not going to come out that you've been there? I just don't quite get that.
It makes no sense to me. Something else that makes zero sense to me is it's the whole Chagos Islands thing. What is going on there? When he said the previous government left a 22 billion black hole, how can he suddenly find 18 billion pounds to give away UK sovereign territory that is critically important, strategically important to our security and our military integrity, and giving it to a country that basically has no claim over the Chagos Islands other than the fact that back when both were British colonies, they were administered together, and it's based on some sort of non-binding agreement, a non-binding legal ruling that surely we can just ignore. What on earth is he doing? What's wrong with him?
I think what he's doing is being a lefty lawyer. That's what he's doing. It's very interesting that Dominic Cummings, people will remember him from Boris Johnson days, as being at the heart of government then and really knowing how things work on the inside, has just put on social media a very, very fascinating, I think, post about how this issue came up when he was in government. He was in Number 10, and he told anyone who brought it forward to him in no uncertain terms that this should go straight in the bin. There was absolutely no need whatsoever to change the status of the Chagos Islands, and he sent anyone who came with that request away with a flea in their ear. Unfortunately, subsequently, I assume Mr. Cummings is saying after he'd been kicked out of Downing Street and no longer had his powerful influence over the then Prime Minister Boris Johnson, Johnson was persuaded by a bunch of lefty lawyers that this did need to be looked at and delegated it to the then James Cleverly, the then Foreign Secretary, who just basically began creating the can of worms that we have today. The bottom line is there is no real reason why Britain couldn't just carry on as we were and just forget this whole complete and utter shambles. It has cost, I think, Keir Starmer a great deal of political capital. And if it does go ahead, how can he and his Chancellor credibly talk about a hole in the public finances ever again? I mean, they're not credible on that anyway, but this just shoots another great big hole in their own credibility, doesn't it?
I mean, the rules of the game internationally seem to have changed since Donald Trump has got into power anyway. One wonders whether he will kibosh the returning of the Chagos Islands to Mauritius by threatening us with tariffs. Of course, Diego Garcia, a very important US shared military base. They're not going to want to see that slipping out of their control. What do you make of Donald Trump's remarks then over Gaza, saying that Israel will turn over Gaza to the US, kind of eyeing it up as a prime bit of real estate?
Well, I think that they're sort of two things, aren't they? I mean, on the one hand, they're very entertaining, and we can all have a bit of a laugh at the idea of Donald Trump treating the world as if it's just options on a, in an estate agent's brochure, and I'll have that bit, and this bit of land looks pretty distressed. I'm sure I can get that for a bargain, and do a whole a huge renovation job, and then it will be all shiny and new and worth a lot of money, and we can joke about that. But equally, we can also maybe give the guy a bit of credit for thinking way outside the box. The problem is, obviously, that no one in the neighbourhood is going to be very supportive of these plans. And I don't think anybody particular has come out in the region and said, yeah, this is a great idea and we can't wait to accommodate all those Palestinian refugees, those that have been displaced, while the Donald turns it into some kind of glorious golf course and Trump Towers.
I mean, people say he's a businessman.
And Alex, can I just say one thing more that occurred to me that really worries me about this plan? Were it even remotely to get off the ground, you do know which country would actually open its arms to a bunch of refugees. I mean, let's give our listeners one wild guess as to which will be the country in Europe that says, come on in, guys. You know, amongst you, there may be some nutty pro-Hamas supporters, might be a few terrorists, but you know what? We're very open-minded here in the UK. Let us give you some free housing and a new life here.
Yeah, so I agree with you there. It's interesting, though. Israel's basically pointed the finger at Spain and Ireland and said, all right, you've been really supportive of Hamas. You've been really supportive of the Gaza Strip and horrible about us. Perhaps you should put your money where your mouth is. But is there not a sort of potential transactional element here? In terms of Donald Trump thinks about things in terms of business, as do most of the Gulf states, I would suggest. And it occurs to me that I wouldn't be surprised if Dubai and the UAE and Jordan and Oman and Saudi wouldn't mind a slice of Mediterranean coastal action, both strategically when it comes to shipping, but also, you know, to throw up beautiful hotels and resorts. They've done such a good job of doing that in their own countries. This is 141 square mile territory. It's minuscule. Should Donald Trump turn around to neighbouring states and say, look, you all take a bit of the Gaza Strip and develop it, and in return, you take a proportion of Palestinians and accommodate them in your country in the time being, and aim by 2030 to have completely turned things around? Do you not think they might go for that?
I really don't think they would go for that, not in the slightest. I mean, the United Arab Emirates doesn't need that grief. It's doing very, very well, thank you very much, without importing any extra trouble in the form of refugees. They're not a thing. As for Saudi, I mean, again, it absolutely doesn't need any of this. And bear in mind that the countries in the region, in the Gulf, that are doing very well are pretty competitive with each other. You know, they don't particularly want, you know, they don't feel the need to share the spoils, really. And I just can't see what's in it for them.
Not even if they saw territory in Gaza as an investment opportunity and they all went into competition with each other about who can build the best skyscrapers and the most wondrous hotels and have access to things like seaports.
Well, now you're spinning it, Alex, and maybe you've got a job to do there. Maybe there is a particular role for you in trying to peddle this around the Middle East, trying to get a few wealthy investors. I think you might struggle. I think they'd much rather build the tallest towers and the shiniest this and the most magnificent that in areas that they can fully control. That is my instinct.
Yeah, your instinct is often right on these things, Isabel. That is why you're our international editor, Isabel Oakeshott. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a short ad break now. But, well, maybe some sense coming out of the government. The civil service have been told, find efficiency savings or you risk facing the sack. Is it going to happen? We're going to be catching up with William Yarwood, spokesperson from Taxpayers Alliance, after this.
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, welcome back. Well, find efficiency savings or risk the sack. That's what civil servants have been told, apparently. They need to find ways to save money from their Whitehall budgets. Ministers are going to be announcing that. It's a drive to reduce government waste. And for the first time, senior officials will be held personally accountable for efficiency savings in their departments. I mean, is this just austerity by another name, something the left-wing banged on about during the Cameron-Osborne era? What sort of savings could be made? Is it going to be enough? And realistically, will people face the chop if they don't live up to the expectations of the Treasury? Let's speak now to William Yarwood, who's a spokesperson for the Taxpayers Alliance. Hi, William. Without doubt, I mean, we've got Doge in America, don't we? We all love a bit of Doge. They seem to be taking Milei's metaphorical chainsaw to spending over there in the States. What is it that's going to be going on here? What are these efficiency savings going to look like? Where might the cuts be made? 5% on their budgets, apparently. Are people going to see their heads roll if they don't meet these targets?
Well, I certainly hope so, Alex, but I don't really have that much faith that civil servants will be punished for not meeting these targets. I mean, for crying out loud, when they're not allowed to work from home more than 4 days a week, they end up going on strike anyway. So, I mean, if they're forced to find these savings, they'll likely just go on strike and protest the cuts. But nevertheless, actually, the first place where the government could find some cuts is actually in the civil service itself. Delta poll actually found out that 39% of Labour voters are in favour of reducing the size of the civil service. That's Labour voters. That's not hardcore, right-wing tax-cutting, voters. That's normal, ordinary Labour voters who think that the state's got too big. Maybe they should start there to begin with. I mean, the civil service is currently about 13.7% times bigger than His Majesty's Armed Forces, for crying out loud. So I think some cuts could actually start in the civil service. But, civil servants aren't really going to fire themselves, are they?
How do we compare to other countries when it comes to the size of the civil service?
Oh, we're pretty bad, Alex, if I'm perfectly honest with you. It's grown actually pretty exponentially since 2016. I mean, you mentioned a little earlier before the break about Cameron and austerity. One thing that Cameron and Osborne actually did quite well is reduce the civil service by about 150,000 over the first 5-6 years of their government. But actually, ever since 2016-17, the civil service has exploded, and COVID actually exacerbated that to the extent that now we have one of the biggest and most bloated states in the country. But to be quite frankly with you, a lot of these civil servants aren't really doing real jobs. A lot of them are doing DEI roles. A lot of them are doing middle management roles. I mean, middle management roles have exponentially increased just over the last 10 years. Frankly, a lot of these roles just need to be thrown out the window. And if Pat McFadden and Keir Starmer had any spine, maybe they say to civil servants, actually, we're going to find the efficiency savings and the reductions in government spending by getting rid of a lot of you.
I mean, do you think that that's on the cards? Might some of these leaders in the civil service, and they've got to take 5% off their budgets, have a look around their own offices and go, well, that person hasn't turned up to work for a while. They're clearly sitting under a slanket on their sofa doing 5% of what they're supposed to be doing. We can get rid of you. Or will these cuts likely impact on provisions sort of on the so-called front line?
Unfortunately, I think that it will impact the front line, and to some extent, I'm actually pretty sick to death of politicians, both in the Labour and the Tory party, talking constantly about the need to reduce the civil service and then never actually doing anything about it. I mean, Starmer talked about cutting about 100,000 civil servants from the civil service just a few months ago, and he was accused by the FDA, which is the trade union that looks after civil servants. He was accused of being a Trumpian populist. I mean, Keir Starmer couldn't get any further from being a Trumpian populist if you tried, but just because he suggested that maybe the state was a bit too big and civil servants were a bit too many, he's being accused of Trumpian populism. But Jeremy Hunt said this back when he was Chancellor under the last government. Boris Johnson said this when he was Prime Minister in 2022. And yet the last Conservative government saw an exponential rise in the size of the civil service, both due to COVID and the inability to actually implement, actually any real cost-cutting savings that they had after the COVID pandemic. So, yeah, quite frankly, I do hope that government ministers and the Prime Minister and Pat McFadden do have the spine to do this. But quite frankly, Alex, I'm not actually that hopeful.
Yeah, I mean, surely if you know, repeatedly we're hearing governments and prime ministers and ministers say that we could shed 100,000 jobs in the civil service. That's a huge number of jobs. I mean, one could only imagine the savings that we'd get from that. Why can't it be done? Is this simply because their union managed to throw legal blockades in front of those proposals?
Yeah, it's partly to do with the union leadership. As I said earlier, I mean, the FDA, any time Keir Starmer criticises the civil service, he's called all sorts of names and told that he needs to calm down, otherwise he's sounding too right-wing, even though, of course, Keir Starmer is actually saying, you know, something remarkably sensible. But also it's just due to the fact that I think our political class and our political elite like saying things that appease the public, like civil service cuts. As I said, civil service cuts are actually one of the core areas of the state which the majority of the public would happily see cut, but they just don't have the spine to do this, or even the know-how or the intelligence to do this, because actually a lot of our politicians lack any sort of a level of creative or political insight that actually in reality they genuinely need if they want to do the big reforms, the big changes and the big cost efficiency savings that this country desperately needs.
I want to talk to you now about local councils, because we've heard that we know, for instance, there's not going to be elections in May, and I think it's 11 local authorities because they're going to face new devolution measures. A lot more responsibility has been put on their shoulders. A lot of them are putting up council tax bills, some of them even going above the cap, which is supposed to stop them putting up council tax bills beyond a certain measure. And then equally, there's a number of them also going bust. How on earth are they going to fare over coming months?
Well, actually, again, if you look at the polling, the majority of the British public actually support cuts in local government because they recognise that there's far too many town hall bosses behind the scenes earning extortionate salaries. I mean, we at the Taxpayers Alliance do a big piece of landmark research every single year called the Town Hall Rich List, where we reveal how many backroom bosses are on over 100,000, 150,000. I mean, we had to include a new section this year for last year, sorry, for over £200,000, and that's including, you know, their salary, their expenses, their pension, and so on and so forth. But yeah, you're right to mention the council tax increase, actually. I mean, we've been out in Windsor and Maidenhead campaigning against the 25% hike, and luckily it was only put up by 9%. But even then, that's 9% more than it really should have been if the council was actually able to get its figures and its own house in order. I mean, I don't see why every time councils go bankrupt, every time councils do awful things with taxpayers' money, why they then go cap in hand to taxpayers to ask them to bail them out again. It's just completely and utterly wrong.
Do you think that there needs to be just basically a massive audit of local authorities, and particularly an audit, let's say, looking for fraud? Because I note that certainly some of the authorities that claim bankruptcy or claim, you know, very tight financial margins have also featured in newspapers and generated headlines with some of their expenditure. For instance, you know, one particular school pupil being ferried to a special needs school in a taxi, costing a local authority to the tune of millions of pounds per year. Do you think we've got a problem with not just waste but also corruption at local level?
Yeah, totally. I wouldn't disagree with that at all. But again, it's whether our political elite has the spine to do something like this. And quite frankly, I don't think our political elite currently does. Like I said, you know, if people want to find out more about town hall waste, you know, feel free to go to the Taxpayers Alliance and read our town hall rich list, and you can see by your local authority actually if they've actually revealed their accounts. Because Alex, a lot of local authorities very naughtily don't reveal their accounts and keep hidden how much their town hall bosses they're earning, you know, what their expenses are, what their pensions are, how much they're spending on consultancy fees, and so on and so forth. But yeah, people can go and look at that and find out the truth. And I would say, you know, vote to get you rid of your councils. But like you said, you know, millions of people are being denied the right to vote, or you know, for reasons that are up for discussion, let's say.
Yeah, I think you're right. Reasons that really should be up for discussion. Unfortunately, we're not really discussing them enough. William Yarwood, spokesperson there from the Taxpayers Alliance. Right, as we stagger and sway into the last 15 minutes of the show. It's your opportunity to take the reins and give me a little bit of respite before I then hand them over to Mr. Kevin O'Sullivan, who is waiting in the wings. If you would like to talk to me in the studio, the number is 0344 499 1000. You can use that to send me a WhatsApp or indeed to leave me a voice note on WhatsApp. We can be texted. I hate that word texted. Text should just be a noun. It shouldn't be a verb at all. You can send me a text message, if you will, an SMS to 87222. Put talk before your message. That way it wends its way into the studio. We're also on X at talkTV if you want to join the conversation there instead. Right, going to take a short break now, but don't go anywhere because it's your opportunity to throw in your 2-bit after this.
On the 18th of January, that appalling march, there were 77 arrests for a variety of crimes, from sexual assault. Yes, somebody was arrested for a sexual assault, assaults on emergency workers, displaying hateful signs. With that level of criminality, the police have got ample cause to say, no. You can't go protesting. The fact that they are going to march on the US Embassy on Saturday is outrageous. There'll be more hate, more arrests, more terror.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there. Right, it's your turn to have a chat. Let's speak to Steve now, who's in Leeds. Hi, Steve.
Evening, Alex. How are you?
I've been better, my love. I have been better, but you know what? Fighting spirit, it's keeping me going. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Just the Chagos Islands.
Yeah.
Nobody's mentioned this so far, and I don't know why Nigel Farage and Richard Tice haven't cottoned onto it. Why don't we just give them to the Americans? It'll cost us nothing. It's an American base anyway. Donald Trump will think we're the best thing since soup in a box, which will be good for Keir Starmer. And the Americans will probably turn it into the 52nd state and make it the Riviera of the Indian Ocean. So it won't cost us all. It's their island anyway. It's their base that's on it. Nobody else is there. Why not just say to Donald Trump, do you want it? Yeah. Thanks, you can have it.
I think that makes a whole lot of sense, actually. I mean, of course, it will upset the international lawyers, and that's exactly what Sir Keir Starmer doesn't seem to want to do. But I think, actually, given half the opportunity, considering Mr. Trump would rather like access to Greenland for strategic and maritime reasons, in terms of resources, in terms of having important naval bases, I think he would bite off our hand, and it would certainly fend off the risk of having tariffs slapped on us. But the problem, of course, is that, you know, Sir Keir Starmer doesn't think in terms of what's in the best interests of Britain or what's in the best interests of the West. He seems to think in terms of what's not in the best interest, what's the worst possible thing he can do. I don't understand his thinking. I don't. Some people say, well, it's because he's an international lawyer and it's a non-binding court ruling, and because he's an international lawyer, that's his language, that's the only thing he knows. He just has to take instructions from faceless bureaucrats and unelected supranational leaders and international lawyers who seem to have woke agendas, and he'll just do as they say. No, you are the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. You're supposed to do what's in the best interests of the United Kingdom, not every other blimmin' country on earth at our expense.
Well, maybe Keir Starmer's thinking about when he's not Prime Minister in 4 years' time, he can get a job on the ECHR.
Oh, he'd love that, wouldn't he?
And earn a fortune. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love that. I'd be right at home, sitting around in that court in Strasbourg, occasionally taking a phone call about a deportation flight while sipping his cocoa with Lord Ali or whatever it is he'd be doing. I'd be right at home with them. But Steve, do you know what? I think that's a very good idea. And perhaps I think there's been a memo that's been sent to the FBI in America, or been sent to the CIA, or at least, you know, Trump's cabinet, Marco Rubio, has been told about what Starmer's plans are, and they don't like it. So perhaps our Nigel needs to have a little word in Donald's ear and says, how about America strikes up a deal with the UK? How about Trump gets on the phone to Starmer and says, if you give us the Chagos Islands, we will do this in return. And that might make you look good, Sonny Jim. The problem is, I just don't think that Sir Keir Starmer ever has it in him to do anything that would be in the best interests of the West, quite frankly. He seems to hate the West and everything it stands for. Steve, thank you ever so much for your call. Right, Edmund is on the phone now from Northern Ireland. Edmund, apparently this is, you're a new caller. This is your first time dialing in. Welcome aboard.
How are you doing, Alex?
Well, all right, if you've been listening, you know I've got some sort of plague in auguritis. The head's spinning and the eyes are rolling and the ears are muffled, and I feel like I want to get into the fetal position and cry. But other than that, I'm spiffing. Thank you.
Well, I was hoping I could speak to that ex-Tory MP you had on earlier. I can't remember his name.
Oh, Henry. You mean Henry?
Yes, Henry.
Right.
Well, Henry was banging on about Brexit. I would like to remind Henry that he and his Tory friends actually betrayed the British people of Northern Ireland because he sold us down the river. Him and his Tory government.
Yeah.
4 countries make up our United Kingdom: Northern Ireland, England, Scotland, Wales. Only 3 of those countries got to leave the European Union. I'm currently being governed and legislated for by 27 foreign countries.
You are absolutely right, Edmund. The deal for leaving the EU was to allow the EU to annex Northern Ireland. It was disgusting the way we gave up that territory. People might be moaning about the Chagos Islands. What on earth have we done to Northern Ireland? And there'll be people out there going, oh, well, you know, it's a fat lot of good you talking about that, Alex. That's your fault. You were for Brexit. You campaigned for Brexit. No, all of us who understood said that we should leave without a deal. If the EU's negotiating chip was going to be, we want a slice of Northern Ireland if in return you're going to get X, Y and Z, we should have said, you're not having Northern Ireland. We'll leave without a deal. We'll revert to WTO trading standards. And do you know what? You're going to cut off your nose to spite your own face, quite frankly, and said we're going to take back complete control of everything. Why we had to have this half in, half out, because, I don't know, big international businesses said they preferred it that way, and give Northern Ireland on a platter to Brussels is disgusting.
I'll tell you what annoys British people in Northern Ireland like myself, okay? In 1982, the same British government, when we had a backbone then, the British government amassed our British armed forces, and we sailed them 8,000 miles south of the South Atlantic to defend 1,800 British people and a few thousand sheep. Now, quite a lot of British servicemen were killed and injured in that conflict, including British servicemen from Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
42 years later, the same spineless, treacherous, cowardly British government sold myself, and my fellow countrymen and women in Northern Ireland down the river and gave us away to the European Union without a bullet being fired in anger. They have completely misread the room here, Alex, in Northern Ireland. There's a lot of angry people here. There's a lot of frustrated people here. There needs to be a change in direction from the British government, the Irish government, and the European Union, because people like me on the British side of things are fed up of 26 years, 27 years of appeasement to the European Union and the Republic of Ireland.
I think you're absolutely right. It's a subject that we don't talk about enough. Thank you ever so much for calling, Edmund there in Northern Ireland. All right. Oh, blimey heck, Kev. I'm feeling rough.
Well, are you? How long have you had this now since America? 3 weeks, is it?
It's 2 weeks I've had this, and it's vertigo. The rest of me feels okay, but the room is spinning.
Is that because your ears are blocked or something?
I don't know what it is. People have said, is it vestibular neuritis, labyrinthitis? I don't know. But I know a lot of people who have it. And literally right now, I feel like I've come off the waltzers. I almost want to hold on to the desk. The room is whirling around. My head is banging. Wow. It is vile, and I'm just like, this has got to go. I want this to go.
Yeah, you've got to get, don't overdo it before you get better. That's the point. But it's good to have you back on the airwaves, Alex. It was good to have you on my show the other night. A lot of people saying we should get the band back together. Couldn't agree more. A year ago, we were still doing it, weren't we?
Crosstalk. It'd be good. The great thing about when you've got a co-presenter is when you feel like I feel right now, at least you can sort of do that thing where you go, take the reins, I'm having a funny.
I used to do that with you all the time. Thinking, I don't feel like talking. I know she will.
Yeah, it's always good. You've got someone else to sort of help you through it, hold your hand.
Exactly right.
Oh, I miss you.
You too. Well, listen, obviously we're going to have a look at Keir Starmer's odd trip to Southport. I don't know what the hell's going on. Why does he have to do it so furtively? Why the cloak and dagger stuff?
What's the point? If you're normally, when you, as a Prime Minister, if you go to somewhere like that to speak to school kids, you're doing it as a press opportunity. What, was he taking a general studies lesson or something?
Well, apparently they hate him up there.
And here, and everywhere else.
Exactly. So Southport's no exception to the rest of the country. But we'll be looking into that. And did he go up there by private jet? Downing Street are refusing to deny that. So, folks, he went up there by private jet. That guy's a liar. I mean, I didn't break the lockdown rules. Yes, you did.
What's with the voice coach? So I had Harry Cole here earlier. Always fun, isn't he, Harry? And he sort of said, I love the way he does that thing that journalists do. Like, you've been a hack. When journalists basically saying, well, there's been a lot of denials that there was anything improper going on in the relationship between them. And you think, you didn't have to bring that up, did you?
Exactly right. Now, I think that with Keir Starmer, the voice coach lessons, this is my new theory,